Good evening.
Good evening.
Dr. Roy Travis.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So we're just to let you guys know and let everyone else know there will not be a program next week. Sadly, me and my wife are going on a cruise.
Oh, you poor thing.
We will not be in this dreariness anymore here in Evansville. Nice one. That was good.
Yeah.
So for all of you joining us for the first time or maybe the second time, based on our focus on local efforts to have accountability and transparency, specifically talking about Centerpoint and the things we have going on. Me and Dr. Roy have talked about a lot of health issues, specifically since COVID came down the pipeline. And we've been hitting on a lot of things that concern us, have concerned us. And I come to the table obviously as a non-physician. Dr. Roy, sitting across from me, is a 50-year practicing physician. He is certified in internal
medicine and pulmonary
disease. And so what we try to focus on is things related to that. Obviously, COVID is a pulmonary condition.
Yes.
Many of the things that happen because of COVID, including potentially vaccines being harmful, maybe. There's a lot of speculation going around. I'm not a doctor, and nothing that I say here is trying to pretend to be that. Dr. Roy hears things and sees things, and it used to be, Dr. Roy, one of the things I've been thinking about really since last week, that your practice is different, whereas you have a much more one-on-one relationship with your patients. You have a concierge practice, meaning people pay a small subscription per month and have access to you when it's convenient for them, or when in dire situations when
they need me,
when they need you or whatever.
Yeah.
And you were just telling a story that one of your patients, old patients, called you and needed a prescription. And you helped them out with that. I guess to get to the crux of it here, we are talking about local efforts to make the city of Evansville and the surrounding area, tri-state, southwestern Indiana region, better, more accountable, the government more accountable, more transparent. Specifically,
I thought that was a joke.
I've had a lot of questions about public health and the health department and what went down during COVID and how things we were told to respond and how everything happened so quickly. It was really, truly quite concerning to me. I started talking to Dr. Roy very early on, before really anyone. I'd been listening to podcasts. Well, as soon as the pandemic hit, I started listening to some people that were talking about other countries and talking about the way things were boiling down, and it wasn't exactly what was happening here, and I found that very curious. And so that pretty well put me on a journey about 5 years ago to end up starting a podcast a couple years ago. And then Dr. Roy joined me pretty early in the journey. We didn't have anything weekly going there for a while. We were just kind of sporadically going. And then as we started having conversations, we basically expanded what we were talking about. We weren't just talking about COVID and all that. We talk about different things that pop up. I mean, if you pay attention to health at all and you're on Facebook or any of these other platforms, things pop up in your reels, things pop up on YouTube, and you never know exactly what's right or what's wrong or whatever. So I try to bring your experience to those clips and to those things to, separate the wheat from the chaff as much as we can.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I sent Dr. Roy a couple clips in the last week, and actually full podcasts. And I never know if he's going to get time to listen to them all because he's a busy guy and he's getting busier because he has picked up a few more patients here recently. But I know for a fact that he did have a chance to listen to some of these, and we're going to mix it up a little bit later in the show. I did want to talk about a couple things prior to that. We have not forgotten about Centerpoint, so any of you circling back around to find out more, there's a bunch of different forums on Facebook. If you want to get involved, I would say get involved there. If you'd like to be involved with the Doge effort here in the Evansville area, reach out to me. You can search Doge of Evansville on Facebook, and I think you can find it. I am also in the works of creating a Twitter page where we can get a little bit more freedom of speech access. And so we're not just going to be focusing on Centerpoint in the Doge of Evansville. There's going to be subgroups. Dr. Roy has agreed, at least at some capacity thus far, to be involved in the ongoing health conversation.
Yeah.
And one of the clips that we're going to go through pretty in depth later on here, we'll get into that. But I guess just to give reference, I know you gave a background about yourself in the last podcast, and kind of, I think the podcast before that also, we talked about why you ended up agreeing to sit down with me and have these ongoing conversations. I didn't prep you for this, so I'm sorry if it catches you off guard. But why don't you tell people again why you're here, more specifically based on what you've seen happen since 2020? Like,
Sure.
What has kind of opened your eyes and made you have these conversations?
Well, when COVID first came out, we were getting a lot of instructions from the CDC and from the state health department, and I followed those for about 9 months or so. And then there was this background that I was hearing that, hey, maybe this isn't the right way to deal with COVID. I mean, there were countries that did not lock down. There were countries that did not make people stay in their homes the whole time. And there were different medications that were being used effectively to treat COVID. We treated them with the medications that were coming out of Big Pharma at that time. And those were quite expensive. They weren't expensive to the patient, but they were expensive to purchase. And obviously the hospitals were getting extra money for that. But I first heard about the use of an old medication for the treatment of COVID, and that can I say that word?
COVID?
No, the
ivermectin. So I wanted to start with a clip before you get too deep in. You can say ivermectin.
Yeah, ivermectin.
And then I want to circle back around and address what you were just getting into.
There was a physician in Marseille, France, who had treated several thousand people with ivermectin, which is a drug that is been around for quite a long time, but it's mainly used for parasites, particularly parasites in animals and also in humans. There's a disease in Africa called river blindness, where the larva of this parasite gets into the eyes, the cornea, and will cause blindness. And a lot of the people in Africa were taking prophylactic ivermectin for their river blindness, to prevent river blindness. And the amount of COVID in Africa was much less than the amount of COVID elsewhere. And that got my attention. And then I saw this doctor in Marseille, France, who talked about treating people with ivermectin for their COVID, and he had several thousand people with very, very good results. And I said, well, I wonder where I can get some ivermectin rather than going down to the pet shop and getting some. And I found out that there were a couple of pharmacies here in town that were stocking it. And I found out where they were, and I started offering that to patients. And patients said, yeah, I'll take that. It beats going to the hospital and getting a big shot and having to stay there for a day or whatever. So I treated people for COVID with ivermectin, not serious COVID, not being on a respirator COVID, but people who were sick with COVID. And up to date, I've had about 150 people that I've treated with ivermectin, and none have had to be hospitalized. And of course, there are no deaths either.
Yeah. So,
sorry.
Go ahead, and then I'll jump in.
Well, I was going to say, I didn't want to interrupt Doc, but I just think that the three of us just now showed one of the problems of what has happened over the past 4 or 5 years. In that, is it okay if I say this word? Can we say this word? Will our crap get censored if we say this word?
Yeah.
And then you look at how well the treatment worked for COVID, and back then they were acting like we were all
allegedly.
Yeah. Allegedly what?
Allegedly worked well for COVID.
Well, okay, fair enough.
That's one of the things we're trying to cover before we come out.
Okay, I'm sorry. So allegedly, whatever. But the fact that everybody was made out to be crazy for even wanting to put that, ingest that.
Horse paste. They called it, worm medicine.
They changed Joe Rogan's color on when they told the story that he was taking horse paste. They changed his color to make him look green whenever they told the story.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was funny that we did that. The three of us did the. Can I say it? Am I allowed to?
So I want to address that real quick. One of the things that I've already talked about is transparency, accountability, but we also need the First Amendment. We need to talk through things. We need to hear all the things that Dr. Roy talked about, the signals that he heard from other countries and other states, other countries around the globe who were doing things differently, and they were hearing different narratives than what we were hearing. Right. And we were actively being censored. You and me did a couple early podcasts, and YouTube basically took those things off the internet because we were saying the word ivermectin, and we were saying it was a potential treatment. And I'm going to share this clip because I think there's a workaround. There's several doctors out there, very, very well-respected doctors that talk about ivermectin quite a bit. And I think there's a trick to it because they're on YouTube. I'm going to show several YouTube clips. We're going to, I think, have kind of a active walkthrough, kind of a watch party in one of the shows that I showed you because it's just so good. I think every person needs to hear certain pieces of that. They covered everything, and I don't want to go too deep just yet. But so the question is, why did we get censored, and why have we just recently got censored compared to people that are saying it? So I'm going to share this clip. It's a fairly lengthy clip, but it's going to show some interesting things, and it's going to kind of set you up to answer maybe how we can talk about it moving forward.
Right.
Okay. Let's try to get into it here.
Well, a warm welcome to today's talk. Now, obviously, today's talk is
Dr.
purely
John
for academic
Campbell.
interest. Never take any medicine.
Okay, here. I started talking over. This is Dr. John Campbell. I have followed him for a couple years. I've seen a lot of things from him, and I've never questioned. I've questioned, and I backtrack, and I look back on things that he said, and he's never been proven wrong yet that I've seen. So we always got to hold people accountable.
He's a doctor in Great Britain.
Yeah, doctor, as you'll be able to see from the accent here. So hang on, and so he's going to kind of right at the beginning. I think he's going to help us explain how we can lead into the ivermectin conversation moving forward. Okay.
Well, a warm welcome to today's talk. Now, obviously, today's talk is purely for academic interest. Never take any medicines or stop taking any medicines that your doctor has prescribed based on what you hear here. But the first clip is with a Mr. Joe Rogan, and it features Dr. Mark Gordon. Let's listen to that clip now. I think you'll find it interesting.
You shouldn't talk about that publicly.
No, I should not.
Ivermectin.
Yeah, ivermectin. Horrible shit.
It's weird that you can talk about it now.
Oh, good.
Now, people are taking it.
Yeah. I think I sent you the ivermectin paper with ivermectin fenbendazole. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have a 76-year-old veteran who was diagnosed with a Gleason 7. Gleason is the grade of cancer of the prostate, and it was a Gleason 7. He went on 12 milligrams of ivermectin every day for 8 weeks, and at 12 weeks he got a PET scan done, a special PET scan done looking at abnormalities in the prostate. They couldn't find anything.
That's amazing.
And his PSA, prostatic specific antigen, when his initial one with the cancer was 12.6, he's now at 5.3.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
One thing I wanted to point out on that is that they're talking about using ivermectin to treat cancers, and they're not talking about using ivermectin to treat COVID at that point. Mm-hmm. So,
Well, Rogan's been talking about it
he's
talking about ivermectin for several years.
Yeah.
Like he was one of the first ones that kind of blasted it out, and he has millions and millions and millions of people listening
Right.
to him. So I think he kind of started an undercurrent of it's okay to talk about it. And then once the pharma narrative kind of fell through, and some of the vaccine stuff we're going to start talking about again here in this episode, I think this is above and beyond. So when you and I refer to ivermectin, you can potentially talk and provide some help in the COVID realm. And what I'm trying to do actively is help you or help other doctors look to things being out there that aren't necessarily pharmaceutical things that they're going to try to give you new medicines or whatever. So there's alternate treatments that are going on that I think are important. And I think they're important. I believe they're important because you and I have talked about it countless times of the skyrocketing rates of many things, and one of them being cancers of all sorts. And not just that they're cancers, but people are getting turbo cancer is kind of a shifty word, but they go from everything's fine to potentially stage 4 really, really quickly
in a matter of 6 weeks.
In a matter of 6 weeks. And so if you can't get in some kind of a standard treatment and do something with it, a lot of people basically are dying pretty rapidly.
Yes.
And so once you get to that point, if it's me, I'm just talking about me here, and I'm not a doctor. If I hear that I have cancer tomorrow, obviously I'm going to talk to a doctor, and talk to you, whoever you potentially refer to me to. But I'm also going to say, well, if they're giving me less and less, chance, and things are going wrong, I'm going to look at stuff like this. I'm going to look at everything I can to survive, right? So that's all I'm saying. We're putting these out there just for people to see with their own two eyes. You're not someone that's promoting what they're saying here, but you're listening to these other doctors, and then hopefully maybe evolving over time, about what may or may not, you might not say should you're not a cancer doctor.
No.
So you can't do that, but you can use your brain and your 50 years of experience and practice and see how things have changed, because that's where medical to me has really changed. You're decentralized a lot more than most medicine providers, I think, because they kind of have to follow very strict guidelines, standards.
Yes.
What is it called? Standards of practice?
Yeah, standards of practice.
So they're kind of they don't have that one-to-one personalized thing where you would see a patient at every stage of something and you'd be able to recognize little shifts and everything. It's like, they're now put kind of into a rotary, and you see your doctor for a couple minutes, and they're in and out, and you're talking to nurse practitioners, you're talking about all these different things. Anyway, I rambled a little bit there. I apologize. Let's get through this clip, and because I think it's important with the story we're trying to tell today.
Now, the second clip is again from Mr. Joe Rogan in conversation with a Mr. Mel Gibson. Let's listen to what happened to 3 of Mr. Gibson's friends.
I'll tell you a good story.
Okay.
I have 3 friends. All 3 of them had stage 4 cancer. All 3 of them don't have cancer right now at all. And they had some serious stuff going on.
And what did they take?
Jesus. They took what you've heard they've taken.
Ivermectin.
Fenbendazole.
Fenbendazole. Yeah. I'm hearing that a lot.
They drank hydrochloride something or other.
There's studies on that now where people have...
That's hydrochloroquine, I think is what he was talking about.
Hydroxychloroquine.
Don't take...
Not hydrochloric acid, please.
Please don't do that.
Yes.
Mel Gibson is an actor, also not a doctor.
Proven that
People
they've...
drinking methylene blue and stuff like that.
Yeah, methylene blue, which was a fabric dye.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a textile dye. And now they find out it has profound effects on your mitochondria.
Yep.
Yeah.
The stuff
Profound
works,
good effects.
There's a lot of stuff that does work, which is very strange because, again, it's profit. When you hear about things that are demonized and that turn out to be effective, you always wonder, well, what is going on here? How is our medical institutions, how have they failed us so that things that do cure you are not promoted because they're not profitable?
Before we get to finish that one off, me and Dr. Roy both have decided to take methylene blue. We both are having positive experiences with it. He can talk about his in a minute, and I can talk about mine if we want to do that. What I will say here is, again, Mel Gibson obviously is not a doctor,
No.
And he's talking, so he's basically saying anecdotal things, meaning it's not a study that's been done. It's not it's not placebo tested. It's not all this. And what you and I have talked about, and why this is important conversation for me today, and for any new people listening, is if pharma can't make a profit off of it, as our system is currently sitting, they are not going to run any kind of a clinical trial on it, because there's no profit in it in the end.
Right.
And so we're forced into this apparatus that is not going to use old medications that have been around forever and repurpose those things. So a lot of what we're talking about today is repurposing versus going to something new and shiny in pharma. And you have a certain principle, Dr. Roy, about we think RFK is going to be inserted tomorrow, hopefully.
Yeah.
I've got my fingers, toes crossed. I think Travis does too. If not, he needs to. So what is your thought?
I even have my eyes crossed. Fingers, toes, eyes, everything.
Well, if Doge is uncovering all this corrupt money being sent all around. We just found out how many billions of dollars was the college institutions were supposed to be taking to do lab work.
Yeah.
And they've been moving that money around to admin and different things within the institutions.
Sure.
So the money that they're supposed to be using to test these things and to do trials and whatever is not being used for that. Am I wrong?
No. Well, it's partially not being used for that. What they're doing is, as I understand it, is about half to a little bit less than 2/3 of what they're given to perform research is going to administrative causes and to just taking care of business, not to the research.
Yeah, and it seems to me they've got their thumb on the weight of looking for new things for pharma, new things, rather than listening to things that are going on out there and being curious and saying, "Wow, we've heard so much about ivermectin and maybe fenbendazole. Maybe we should run some things real fast because we really care, A, that people aren't going to get sick and die of COVID, and B, if there's something to be potentially curing cancer for some people, shouldn't we be curious about that? I mean, why no curiosity? That's just a little bit strange to me."
Well, I can tell you the answer to that. The answer is there's no money in curiosity for old drugs. Old drugs have outlived their patent, and they're called generic drugs now, and they're very inexpensive. Ivermectin, if you purchase it at wholesale, is you can get about 20 tablets for less than $5 or $6.
So again, the purpose of this, I know most people. I mean, basically, I've been doing not much else but research and trying to keep my company afloat. That has nothing to do with podcasting for the last 5 years, and what I find that I love is to pay attention to kind of these signals that are going on out there. My career that I have now, I pay attention to signals, and I create basically a system to help people rank on Google. And so I like looking at data. I like getting results based on that. But these things to me are hugely important to our local population. And the reason why they are, not most people don't have time to go out and do the research. And unfortunately, our local doctors are not in a position to answer these questions the way these doctors and other people are putting them out there. And so most people were just kind of raised to trust your doctor.
Sure.
Whatever they're saying right now, it's got to be true.
It's now 30% trust their doctor.
Okay. So if you don't trust your doctor and you're just afraid to say it, you're not alone. You're in the 70%. You're not in the 30%. And that's unfortunate. I mean, you got people like Dr. Roy, in my opinion, is one of the most honest guys. We disagree a lot on some things.
Yeah.
and I think that's what science does. I'm not a doctor, but I do a lot of research, and I hear a lot of scientists and doctors saying things.
Sure.
And so I want to bring those signals to you and then let your brain bounce off of it.
And sometimes I agree, and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I turn around and say I was wrong.
Well, and I think that's the most important part. You have to be curious. You have to be open to hearing it. You can disagree. You can have your reasons. And then if you're really still curious after the end of it, you should go do a little more research on your own, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we should all do.
That's what I do.
And then you're like, well, I screwed that up. And that's where I think right now, if any doctor that hears this or anyone that knows a doctor hears this, I think the big thing that we all need to try to figure out, and I hope RFK can bring this solution, because right now we have the golden duct tape and the golden handcuffs that you and I have talked about.
Yes.
Meaning doctors probably are afraid to speak out and say anything outside of what they've been told they can say.
Yes.
They're not, I haven't heard any local doctors saying, oh man, we were really messed up, kind of the whole COVID thing. If we get another massive outbreak or something happens again, we're going to do it differently, and here's what we're going to do.
Well, they'll say that in private.
Yeah. But they can't. But
they can't tell their boss
in private, that's fine. But that doesn't help the masses that aren't in that private conversation.
That's right.
So part of this work that we're trying to do here is not say, everyone should practice informed consent. We're not saying don't talk to your doctor.
Yeah.
We're not saying we're not telling you to do anything. All we're saying is there's a lot of information going on out there. We're trying to condense it and help move the needle. As fast as we can, because quite honestly, the way the pandemic rollout happened, local health department all the way up, scared me. I mean, I've never felt that way before, and I never want to feel that way again.
So many of my patients were just scared. They're scared to come out of their houses, and some people said, I had a couple come in and said, we are not leaving our house until a good vaccine is available.
So they're still in their house?
Yeah, they're still in their house. I don't know whether they took the vaccine or not. They've kind of gone out of my
well, and if they haven't been watching our program, all I'll say is you and I have talked about not just potentially alternative treatments. We've talked about lifestyle and comorbidities. And you've talked about vitamin D to me for a very long time. And
yes.
You've talked about most of the population has been vitamin D deficient.
Yes.
And the reason why we're wearing these orange glasses is because being vitamin D deficient is caused by quite a few things. One of them is not getting enough sunlight.
Yes.
And you and I have talked about the blue light situation.
Yes.
And we're not going to get deep into that. I just wanted to throw it out there. The reason why we're wearing these is because we're trying to improve our redox potential. Our redox potential basically is we're getting our natural vitamin D levels up. Mm-hmm. We're getting sunlight in our eyes. These things help us in our circadian cycle.
Yes. Meaning
when you wake up in the morning, if you can get out and see the sunshine, get outdoors, you should do that. Take a walk. You should be outside as much as you can. I don't like wearing sunscreen. There's a lot of people out there that swear by it, especially cancer doctors. I've gone down many deep rabbit holes, and I believe blocking the sun from our skin doesn't allow certain vitamin D uptake.
Blocks vitamin D.
And so do your own research. We've got a bunch of clips in our old podcasts to look into redox potential. If you want, I actually have some good news, gentlemen. We don't plug things. None of us are making a profit here. Dr. Roy's going to talk about some of the things that we're doing just to make a little money to buy some equipment. I do have a affiliate program now with glasses that are orange, that are blue light blocking. And so I'll share that affiliate information later on, and it'll be in the description. But if you have more information about that, you can feel free to reach out to me, and we can talk about the blue light blocking piece of it. Let me maybe finish the rest of this clip.
Yeah. One of the things, Chad, maybe we ought to clarify things a little bit.
Go ahead.
Redox is something that we said, but it's reduction of oxidation into energy. And that's what the mitochondria in your cells do. Mm-hmm. And, vitamin D increases the ability of your cells to do the oxygen reduction. And also methylene blue does that same thing.
Yeah, we got some methylene blue clips we're going to look at.
Yeah, methylene blue is like putting STP in your car's gas tank. It really makes things better.
And Dr. Roy and I have talked about certain products that we both like. We're not going to plug those today, but if you have those questions, Dr. Roy's contact info will be in the show notes, as will mine. I'll get you in touch with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're right there.
Don't give him my home address.
So many of you who have paid attention to health probably have heard of oxidative stress. And
yes.
Oxidative stress basically is one of the primary things that destroys mitochondria, destroys cells. Yeah. And that's why, you basically deteriorate. Mm-hmm. And so the redox potential, methylene blue, the sunlight, getting good sleep, exercise, some other things basically can help fix things. It gets your vitamin D levels up. And
yes.
I don't know what the percentages were because we didn't get good data from COVID, but people with more comorbidities passed away from COVID than people with no comorbidities, at least early on.
Yes.
And vitamin D levels was a big indicator of
vitamin D levels and previous lung disease and poor health as pretty much anything. If you don't get out and exercise, that's one of the reasons that you have poor health.
All right, let me finish this clip, and then we got several other ones I got to bounce around.
Well,
you've got something else playing.
What happened?
I turned this.
Increasing interest.
You've got something else playing.
I do. Okay. Well,
hang on. Go back and find out whatever else is you've got playing on your machine.
Okay, that's weird.
We're getting double.
People nervous. Nobody wants to lose their job to a supercomputer.
Yeah, you've got Joe Rogan on one, and you've got the doctor on another.
I don't know what that. I don't even know. I don't see anything else playing. That's a weird thing. Usually you can see the mic playing in the app, right? I mean, you can see it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you'll see audio technical difficulties.
That's weird. That's never happened before, ladies and germs.
Yep.
What is that?
Do you want me to just let it play low? Sound?
Oh, okay. It's I'm sorry. Yeah, that started playing. Now I'm going to lose that clip. Let me. Dr. Roy, if you want to riff on something, I'm going to try to cue up this thing here.
I don't really have anything else to say, but the reason that doctors in practice don't say much is that they are limited to the amounts of things that they can do and say, and they're clinicians. They are not researchers, so they don't have the time to go back and research things. Whereas people like me who have a small practice do have extra time that we can sit down and actually take a look at things and see what's going on with everybody else.
I think I'm getting it worked out here. I'm pretty close.
All right.
Okay, well, you're good. I have one other thing. So have you guys ever seen the U.S. debt clock? Do you know what I'm talking about when I say U.S. debt clock?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the Doge savings has its own spot on the debt clock now, just so you know. So I look at it every once in a while. He's up to almost $88 billion that the Doge has been able to trim off. I guess
that's amazing.
You might say so. So 88
off
billion
of our annual expenses.
Yeah. So I mean, we're still where are we at here? 36 trillion.
Yeah.
It looks like it's about 36.5 trillion.
I mean, but
soon we're going to be able to reverse the clock.
I'm hoping to see this clock start to go down at some point. But right now it's slowly going up. It's every 100,000 100,000 right there.
Yeah.
Like it's literally it's that much, but it has Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. It gets everything.
Yeah.
Everything is part of that.
Yeah.
But like you said, hopefully it'll start to turn down the clock a little bit. But he's at just shy of 88 billion right now.
Well, since this clip, that's good news. Since this clip popped up and was making noise, I will just do a quick shout out to Dr. Jack Cruz, Uncle Jack. We're just telling the blue light story and why we've got these glasses on, and that we first heard that he was one of the early indicators of that. The other thing that he talked about is being a bad thing going on in the world is LED lights and fluorescent lights. These lights have basically the bad light that don't allow your brain to think it's nighttime. It's in a nanometer range that doesn't allow your melanin to start rejuvenating once you basically the sun goes down.
Yeah.
And I said it early on, and I know you heard it and remember. I'm like, I can't believe we're forced to use these LEDs. We can't find incandescent bulbs anymore. Obama, he got rid of them, and then Biden basically killed him. And I'm going to share this clip, and I think it's going to make Dr. Jack happy. And I certainly, when I heard it, it made me happy.
Trump's killing Biden's annoying regulations on showers, washing machines, and dishwashers. Let the water flow, and let there be light. Incandescent light bulbs are back. Now we can all go back to looking like sexy movie stars. Trump spends.
So apparently he passed an executive order, which is going to allow manufacturing of incandescent light bulbs again.
Yeah,
So,
if that crazy judge will let him do that.
what the executive orders or
Yeah, the
I don't see
the
that.
One,
I don't see him
the
stopping
one
anything.
Obama judge said no. You have to go back and put everything that you took down, put it right back.
So I'm gonna
internet.
I'm gonna be the guy here real quick because I just have a little bit.
You're a guy.
The guy.
The guy, the guy who's going to talk about how like the incandescent bulb, like why. I mean, so it's going to be less energy efficient.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
What about that? This is where I want to get. I would love to get one, but this is where I want to get a light spectrometer, some type of meter, or some type of tool that we can. Because my LEDs, I can pull out the blue light in my LEDs. Now, whether or not it's actually doing what but I mean, I can get it to do what these.
It's not just the color. We showed a clip on one of.
But it changes. It changes the wavelength. Like it actually changes more than just the color.
There's noise, and the frequency of the bulbs is also much different. Like an incandescent bulb, if you're looking at light and a sound, then there's sound attached to everything.
Sine waves and things.
It's much more calm and more in the spectrum of natural sunlight, right? And incandescent bulbs are not nearly as intense that way. So I think you need to continue digging down in there. Why I think that's a win, because I know Dr. Jack has went way down the rabbit hole in that. He's a brain surgeon and a very, very smart guy. RFK has also gone down into it, and I know why that signal hit Trump's lap. So if you turn out, if we go down that rabbit hole, I'll say that I'm wrong about incandescent lights. But I know one thing is like if I'm sitting with the same watt light and out on a chair, I've actually done this experiment. Use an incandescent bulb and compared to an LED bulb, there's a different feel and energy to it. LEDs now hurt my eyes. After wearing these very consistently, Trav, it doesn't matter if I'm looking at these or whatever. If I look at them for very long, my eyes will get burny and itchy. So that's not science. That's just, my own personal experience. But I think we need to go down that rabbit hole, and not during the podcast. But sure. I'm still looking for the spectrometer, somebody to donate one of those.
Yeah, they're in the thousands of dollars.
That's why I don't own one. But,
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get back into that. Let me finish this clip so we can move on.
Bricks are often out of patent, remarkably inexpensive, with potential wider therapeutic applications than their original indications. Now, the problem is there's a real lack of trial data on this, and we know this is true because clinical trials are expensive and people aren't going to spend a lot of money on trials. But I believe that President Trump is going to reintroduce right to try. So people with diseases like cancer or terminal diseases will have a right to try a new drug. Or a repurposed drug. And this means that they should be available on prescription fairly soon in the United States. And this means we can collect very detailed, ongoing, longitudinal, prospective data to allow us to adjudicate definitively on efficacy, even without potentially a randomized double-blind controlled trial.
So I felt that was very important just for us to hear that signal. If he's able to allow that right to try, that means that's a game changer.
I thought he put that in his first administration, the right to try. Did Biden come back and cut it up?
Something happened to it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, to me, that would have been something that we would have potentially heard about, unless it just got covered up and muted by media.
Yeah,
which is possible.
That's very possible, but it's more likely than not, in my thoughts, that that the Biden administration cut that off when they came in, because they really backed down on a bunch of the stuff that Trump had done. I mean, they cut up the Keystone pipeline and all the other things that are going on. The drilling offshore, the drilling in northern Alaska.
Well, I know that we're in the next episode that I do with the guy I would consider to be probably the most expert in the energy realm, as far as who's formerly worked as a in-house counsel for Vectren. And basically, I don't know if I am going to call him a whistleblower yet, but he's definitely knows all sides of the story, and he's willing to say what he knows, which is, I think, is a good foundation to understand how we can start changing. You know, anytime you see something you don't like, and we're referring back to energy, our costs are super expensive. I mean,
yes,
and there doesn't seem to be any end in sight. So it's to me, this right to try thing at least is it's something. I think RFK will be accountable. You know what I mean? So if we mention and hold pressure on him, what does right to try mean? How can that roll out to doctors? So if I learn about it as a human, a citizen, and I don't hear about it from my doctor, but I'm listening to people like us say, there's now this thing called right to try. If you're having bad results with your standard cancer treatment, or if you want to look outside of the box, this right to try thing allows you to see these other things going on. Maybe even participate in a study yourself.
Sure.
Right? So
that's one of the things that doctors do, and I have witnessed that a time or two, that people will go and during the right to try and say, well, I have a right to try this other one. They say, okay, you're no longer my patient. So they'll get rid of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I have some other clips here. Travis, do you have anything you want to add to? It seemed like you were digging through something on. I was just looking at lights.
Just the lights. So it looks like there was back in 21. I can't find much. I just now started, so I haven't dug too much into it. But it looks like a couple of guys in let's see here, where were they? The University of Houston want to develop a phosphor that, when used in a violet LED device, would result in a warm white light while avoiding the problematic wavelength range. Yeah. It looks like they've created a proof of concept and identified and synthesized a new luminescent crystalline phosphor containing europium. In thermal stability tests, it all worked out the way it should, but the wavelengths were much closer to that of a incandescent bulb than an LED bulb. So it looks like there is either work to do it, or they've been silenced since 21 because of something. I don't know, because I can't find anything more. There's no links from this. It was August 23rd of 21. Two guys from University of Houston, Jacoa Brgoch, and Shruti Haryani at the University of Houston. Looked like they did create a proof of concept, though, by using violet LEDs covered with a silicone cap containing blue compound blended with red emitted and green emitting phosphors to produce the desired bright warm light while minimizing the intensity across blue wavelengths. So anyway, looks like somebody is in looking to try to figure that out, but it may or may not be something that's part of it now.
Well, if it was that long ago, I suspect that it was either not successful, or they were told to stop or fired.
Yeah, I don't know. Once again, I just still want to measure the wavelengths of different LEDs just to see what that. I mean, do our own tests. Hopefully someday.
All right. Yeah, there's a bunch of different directions we could go right now. I'm trying to kind of align with the research with where our conversation has gone here. There's another. Let me see if this is queued up.
We were talking about methylene blue earlier.
Yeah, I've got some.
Well, I did. Did I send you that thing where somebody was, I guess, sitting a couple rows behind RFK Jr. and they saw him putting with a dropper or something in his drink, and they didn't know what it was, and it was
on that.
Yeah, and it was methylene blue.
It was methylene blue. He was at a dropper and he was putting methylene blue in water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so RFK is using methylene blue.
Right,
for
correct.
sure.
Right, that's where I was.
And I'm using it in my coffee every morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing it. I'm doing it some mornings, especially the ones that I'm doing my infrared sauna and cold plunge.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just trying to maximize my redox potential.
Yeah. Infrared saunas are one of the things that we haven't really talked about much, but
We haven't.
You and I are both doing them, and we both enjoy it, and we think that it makes us feel better.
Yeah, so very anecdotal.
Yes.
And as will most anything.
2 out of 2.
Yeah. Well, isn't your buddy another doctor doing it and having some prostate improvement?
Yes.
International Spy or somebody else?
That's methylene blue.
Carlos the international
terrorist is
also he's also a doctor, a radiologist.
Yes, he is a radiologist. Okay. But he's been taking methylene blue for almost a month, and he finds out that he doesn't have to urinate as frequently and he hasn't had any prostate problems, which he was having before.
So again, I'll just say, you're not a specialist in that area. You're not telling anyone they should go out and take methylene blue. You're just saying, you and I do. We've had some positive effect.
I've had many colleagues and patients who have done that. I had a patient come in today, and I mentioned methylene blue to her, and she said, "Oh, I've been using it for 3 weeks."
Awesome.
And she said, "How much longer?" And I said, "Probably another week or 2, and you should feel a whole lot better."
That's fantastic.
She is sleeping better. And there's another patient who just started taking methylene blue last week, really. And she said she already feels better, and she's sleeping better and has more energy.
And there's all kinds of clips out here. I'm sharing a post online from William Mackus, MD. We've watched clips from him in the past.
He's the oncologist.
He's the oncologist. So this is a big study that's getting ready to come out about methylene blue and breast cancer.
Wow.
So methylene blue has been around since the 1800s, and it was called the magic bullet back in the day because I forgot the saying, but if they didn't know what to do, get methylene blue or something that rhyming.
Methylene blue is an antibiotic in certain circumstances, particularly in the urinary tract. Mm-hmm. And for years, even back into the 1970s and early 80s, they would prescribe methylene blue for people who had chronic urinary tract infections.
Yeah, and so what Dr. Jack Kruse has said multiple times, methylene blue is not a do this or do radiation. It is an adjunct type of thing. And Dr. Jack, as a brain surgeon, said he would prescribe someone with heavy doses of methylene blue prior to and potentially right after surgery. Mm-hmm. And then his recovery was get him out in the sunshine, get him whatever, and he had very great success. So that's what it says here. Methylene blue could be used as an adjunct to breast cancer surgery to eliminate microscopic residual malignant cells in post-surgical tumor bed. So working as a cleanup agent, it sounds like, kind of in common terms, maybe. I highly recommend anybody would follow Dr. William Mackus. It's Mackus at Mackus MD. This original post was at Dr. Jack Kruse. He's got several people that are trying to spoof him, probably CIA people. So you have to make sure that it's Plebe Kruse. He's got 101,000 followers, and he's only following 2647. So make sure you don't get any of the people trying to spoof him.
Yeah, if it says Dr. Jack Kruse, then
You got to go one step further.
Yeah, it has to be pleb cruise.
Pleb Cruise, and somebody could probably change Pleb Cruise, but it's at Dr. Jack Cruz. No weird symbols, no other things. And again, he's got a lot of followers, so that's a legitimate one. I think I got another clip queued up here. Hopefully it's right. I can never know with YouTube. They're not very good. But this one is, again, it's Dr. Mackus and Dr. John Campbell, who we just listened to. This entire link to this podcast and anything else we share will be in the show notes. So if you have time, you want to. This one's an hour and 42 minutes. A lot of people don't have that amount of time.
Yeah,
I highly recommend it.
I went the whole way through on this one because, Dr. Mackus has some good things to say, because he, being an oncologist, will come back and say these are anecdotal results that we're seeing here. There have not been any large tests or anything like that. So he's saying these are anecdotal.
Well, and I say that's what we need to do more of every time we talk about ivermectin or anything else. Yeah, this is out live on YouTube. Yes, and they say a lot more things, and they're just very careful to basically say, "I'm not a cancer doctor. I'm not telling you to do this. Go contact."
That guy is a cancer doctor.
Yeah, that's right. Dr. Mackus is a cancer doctor, and Dr. John Campbell is he's more of a looking at stats and trends, and he like research type of thing. So it's, again, a great interview. Hopefully this one's queued up and you can find some value from it.
They have no idea that there's synergy going on with ivermectin, where the ivermectin sensitized the tumor. And that's why the radiation is shrinking the tumors dramatically, but the radiation oncologist doesn't know that, and the patient is too scared to tell them, because most of the time when my patients have told their oncologist that they're taking ivermectin or fenbendazole or mebendazole, the oncologist has a very bad reaction.
Yes.
To the point, and this happens in the UK, this happens in Canada, this happens in Australia, to a lesser degree in the United States, the oncologist will actually threaten the patient that if they do something like this, that they'll drop them as a patient.
So I'm just going to stop it every once in a while just to hear that and let that sink in. So again, your doctor might not be like this. We're not trying to tell you your doctor is bad, that you shouldn't trust them. What the big overarching thing that I heard from this is, I don't know if local doctors are open to hearing these adjunct things or not. And so it's probably not worth it to go in and start, asking. If you ask, have you looked into fenbendazole or have you looked into ivermectin? If they give you a weird look, you probably shouldn't just talk about it anymore. Right. And then what I would recommend is, don't walk away from the doctor and say, that's not my doctor anymore. Mm-hmm. I would say, listen to people like this and potentially overlap the things that you're doing. This Correct. Again, if I were doing it, this is the way I would do it.
I have not had any conversations with oncologists in this area.
I've tried.
So you've tried?
Yeah, nobody will talk.
Well, if I were to pin them down, they could probably talk to me,
but nobody would talk on air, I guess. I would say.
No, nobody would talk on air about that.
But that's what we're trying to get to, Dr. Roy.
Yes.
So like I keep coming back to this because it haunts me a little bit. You say, we had a rough episode or two, and you thought I was challenging you as a doctor, and you're like, why am I here? And I'm like, you're here because we're trying to tell the story of, this is going to be a rough journey for a lot of people. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of things that, and I'm not even saying I was right about something and you were wrong or anything, but there was just some friction. I'm like, there's going to be friction. We're going to be mad about things that happen, and we're going to hear things that we don't like, and we got to get over it. I mean, we need to trust our doctors again. And I think you're a bridge to that personally.
I will say real quickly, I know it's one of, God knows how many doctors are here in town, but my doctor, I actually brought up methylene blue to her. And I said, have you heard of this? Yeah, I've heard of it. What do you think about people who take it? And she said, well, it's been said to do this or that. I've never really dealt with it too much. But she didn't necessarily, she wasn't off-put it. She wasn't put off by me asking about it.
Is a good term to use.
It's been said.
It's been said.
If you're a doctor, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
If you're talking to another doctor, it's good to say.
It's been said that methylene
blue could blah 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 whatever. Yeah,
that's right.
So she wasn't opposed to it, I guess, is what I'm getting at. So there are going to be some out there that I think that aren't as much as the doctor they were talking about on that clip that was, hey, I'm going to drop you now. So I think there's some out there probably.
He was talking about the oncologists in Australia and Canada and United Kingdom that do that. He said it's less in the United States.
Oh, that's true. He did say that.
I think for most of the doctors I know, they are very mobile as far as adopting new things. If someone gives them good information.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's what I'll say. Any other doctors, I mean, I've got a really great doctor of dentistry. I think they're DDS. Is that what that is?
DDS.
We had our first conversation where he's agreed to have more as soon as my wife quits parading me around the countryside. But I think the moral of the story is here, I'm not hating on any doctors. These clips that I share, I'm not saying the doctors in our area aren't great doctors. We talk about the golden handcuffs and the duct tape because not only are they restricted on what they can say because of standard of care, frankly, the way the practices are set up, they don't have time to deep dive into these methylene blues and the ivermectins and the things that are going. They don't have the time that I'm spending in this, and so we need a mechanism for them, and I think that's what's kind of happening is a think tank of people like Dr. John Campbell and Mackus and McCullough and Malone and all these people that are, shaping the narrative. And I hope that RFK is able to take the spotlight from where it is currently and to inch it towards something more along the lines of we need to have this free talk. We need to be talking through these ideas and putting these things to the test. I mean, that's what I hope RFK brings, and if he doesn't do that, I'm going to be super, super disappointed. Right, honestly.
And you will find that the non-physicians who are in a leadership position at large hospitals are not very mobile. They will not move around unless something is thrown in their face in order to have that. So they are not as like I said, mobile or
When you say mobile, do you mean like flexible?
Flexible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Willing.
Well, again, that's the word I was looking for.
We talked about it in a previous podcast. Just with it used to be when you're probably in your early days of being a doctor, you could spend time with the patient.
Sure.
And then as the practice itself changed and the profit centers changed and the drive for profit changed, and I'm not saying it's more incentivized for profit now than it should be. I believe it is, but that's just me. Yeah. They don't have the time. That's right. They've got to get however many patients per day.
They have to kick out 20 or 30 patients a day, and
a lot of paperwork.
Do a lot of paperwork along with it, and they don't have time to sit down and talk to the patient for 25 or 30 minutes like I do with mine.
When a lot of them, I want to say a lot. Many of them potentially could go down the rabbit hole of methylene blue and or ivermectin, but then it would probably be sacrificing their time at home because they are already overworked. It's like, so you're either you have a family or you have a life, or
they work 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
And they go home and they're dead tired and they grab something to eat and then they fall asleep.
Crash and do it all over again. So again, I'm not hating on doctors. I think the system is set up in a disadvantage to both them and to us.
Yes.
And so hopefully these conversations are going to help that. I'm going to go a little more into this clip. I think they had some insightful things.
Yes.
Which to me is very unethical. But this is
that's bully boy behavior to me.
Bullying. It's bullying, exactly. Yeah. But this is what patients face. And I'll have patients tell me, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have told my oncologist. I wanted to be honest. I wanted to be open. Mm. And now they've threatened me. They said, we'll kick you out of the trial. We'll stop treating you. This doesn't happen as much in the United States. I find in the United States that culture, it's not as, the bullying behavior is not there. The oncologists are more open. I've had oncologists say, that's perfectly fine. You can take ivermectin with this regimen, no problem. But once you go outside of the United States, especially in countries like Canada, UK, Australia, there's a lot more of this bullying behavior. And
the idea that a doctor should threaten their patient is just
It's
unconscionable.
It's unethical. It's unprofessional. It shouldn't happen, but unfortunately, it does.
It does, yeah.
And so patients have learned that it's better not to tell their oncologist, and their oncologist doesn't even want to know. So when they have a good response, my patients will tell me my oncologist didn't ask any questions, didn't ask if I was eating different, if I was doing anything different, didn't want to know, didn't care.
We have a name for this in England. It actually comes from Australia, but it's called curiosity deficit disorder. And it's quite a debilitating condition.
That's absolutely funny. And especially in oncology, it's to not have curiosity, to not want
this is what science and medicine's all about. Exactly. Why has that happened? What's going on there?
Yeah, I don't know where that clip was going, but I think that brought in humor in it. It also, something we've talked about was curiosity. Is you have to have it to change anything. Otherwise, you just get stuck in, this is just the way we do it.
I wonder why Canada, UK, and Australia, like why those are the ones that they pinpointed or don't want to know about it, don't want it to be done. I wonder what in those...
What caused that?
Yeah, like why there?
Well, they're more authoritarian in nature. They don't have the freedoms that we have here. The reason why the U.S. is different because we have a First and a Second Amendment.
Well, so
they don't.
I don't want to say something that might, I know we can say ivermectin, but I don't know if we can say universal health care. But I mean, I know Canada does. I think UK
does.
Does Australia then?
Yes.
So I don't know if that's. I'm just drawing lines that may not need to be drawn, but I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Well, when you have universal health care, that means it's very structured.
Right. That's exactly. Yeah.
And there is no.
And you wait
Dr. Roy
7 years to
do something special for
finger
you.
sewed back on.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like an assembly line. I would probably call it.
And in the United States, it's becoming more and more of an assembly line. The physicians are expected to see 25 or 30 patients a day. And if they don't, then their salaries come down. And if they continue to do that, then they're discharged. I know of a couple of people who have been discharged from some of the local systems because they were not seeing enough patients, or because they didn't follow the directions of the overlords. Well, that's a funny thing you say, but it's like that.
No, I know. It's funny because it's fairly true.
And so many times, the person who is in charge is a non-physician, which is one of the reasons that early in my physician tract, I got a master's degree in healthcare administration, because all these people say, well, I've got a master's in healthcare administration and I know more than you. And I would come back at them, I've got a master's in healthcare administration too. So that puts us on a level playing field right now. And I'm the one that has the MD behind my name.
That's right. That's what he said.
Drop the mic.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard any more about the bird flu scare that they're trying to push around?
Well, I saw that it was affirmed that there was tests done, and
they killed a lot of chickens.
They did a test on the geese at the state hospital, and it was confirmed that they did have bird flu.
Well, it was confirmed in the state lab, but you cannot say that they actually did have it unless it's done in a federal lab. And they say that it was not negative.
A local news group actually said that it was bird flu. But that's just local news.
Yeah, they just made it up.
Well,
that's why we're coming up with alternative media here locally.
They said in one that I saw is that because it wasn't done in a federal stat, it was all you can say is that it was not negative. You can't say that it was positive.
I just have to say, I don't know how many people actually got on and saw your Facebook post, but I went through a lot of these that people were saying. I like the WRTT. We Report the Truth. I kind of like that one.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
you know.
What did you see mine in
Or
there?
or like the 4T or something, like To Tell the Truth or something.
I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning. My hair was on fire, and I had all these thoughts and ideas, and I've been researching all day, and I just posted stuff along the way, and I'm kind of like Joe Rogan. He posts stuff and he never really looks at it.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back and look at that whenever it comes time to actually name it.
WNBS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine
we're
is
no BS.
WNBS. We're no BS.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, if
that was mine.
Trump would EO CBS over to me, that's actually my initials. I could just take CBS over.
Yeah.
There you go.
Come on, why not? Yeah. What are you laughing at? That's not funny. Anyway, so I'm gonna.
No, I'm laughing because I'd like to see it happen.
So there's a clip here. I don't know if this is a clip. I'm gonna start from the beginning, but everything that we're showing here, it's in the show notes. So if you're a farmer or you're concerned about bird flu and you're wondering and you're hearing things about it hopping from to animals, whatever. First of all, don't panic. Don't say we need to hurry up and rush vaccines into our chickens, and we need to rush vaccines into humans, and we need to kill the chickens. There was a lot of stuff done on knee jerk. There's a lot of research that came out on the chickens that were killed and why we have an egg shortage, that you need to do your own homework. You need to dig into it. I don't have enough time to really pare that down today. This was a good one talking about fear mongering. And there's another one that I think I have a clip about the chickens that I thought was good, and I'll try to come to that. If this doesn't start off good, I didn't have it queued up because YouTube's not good, but we'll...
Current avian influenza virus strains have been circulating and diversifying in wild bird populations for at least the last 100 years. The practice of exterminating animals to prevent disease spread, with government compensation, has been in use for centuries. Yet, with the advent of PCR testing, the risk of false positives can lead to unnecessary animal exterminations.
Oh, yeah.
I got a whole nother clip on PCR.
If they can find this virus in you at all, and with PCR, if you do it well, you can find almost anything in anybody. So that could be thought of as a misuse of it, just to claim that it's meaningful. But it doesn't tell you that you're sick, and it doesn't tell you that the thing you ended up with really was going to hurt you or anything like that.
Since the H5N1 bird flu outbreak began in late 2020, millions of healthy chickens have been culled in an attempt to prevent spread. The conventional practice involves culling all of the birds in a facility in which the virus is detected. The frequently stated rationale for this practice is that highly pathogenic avian influenza has a mortality rate of 90% of domesticated poultry, often within 48 hours, so that one might as well destroy the entire flock and start over with an entirely new one. Often using inhumane methods such as ventilation shutdown.
Ventilation shutdown is the killing of animals by shutting off vents to basically suffocate animals.
Oh my God.
Ventilation shutdown plus adds carbon dioxide or heat, which only increases the suffering of the animals.
Or foam depopulation, which involves spraying birds with foam to suffocate them.
Jesus.
The U.S. government incentivizes this practice, known as depop, by reimbursing the farmer for all culled birds, but not for birds that die of influenza. Because this has long been the conventional practice, there is zero financial motive to wait and see if the virus is indeed as pathogenic as claimed. Currently, there is an urgent need to conduct research on the alternative practice of waiting to see if some percentage of the flock survives and develops herd immunity. The unnecessary culling of millions of healthy animals can lead to food supply chain collapse, resulting in catastrophic consequences.
Its latest news report, the USDA shows large egg prices around the nation have jumped.
Melbourne shoppers are being told to brace for egg supply shortages for up to a year as the bird flu crisis unfolds.
It's thought it's families with children who are struggling the most. As this graph shows, since April, food insecurity has increased more amongst this group compared to households without children.
Okay, watch this whole thing, please. My blood pressure just went up, and I cannot watch it anymore. Watch the whole thing. This is from Peter McCullough. He was one of the early bell ringers whenever COVID came through, and we started acting in ways in public health that turned out to be not good, and how we handled with the masking and the social distancing. That was all junk science. Based on this, he was right then. I haven't found Peter McCullough to be wrong about anything yet. Maybe you have a couple things. I would rather listen to someone like this ask the important questions and to say, quit fear-mongering. Again, with RFK coming in, I'm hoping we can stamp down this. I think a lot of this I don't want to get into the USAID thing right now, but a lot of these funds that were swashed around and they were moved to do narratives and propaganda.
Yeah.
I heard it from Dr. Heather Hying, who sits with Dr. Brett Weinstein and Dark Horse. We watch a lot of their clips. Jillian Michaels, I think she just said in a podcast, and I watched the beginning of it, and her insight right at this point in time, prior to RFK taking over and shedding some light on some of these things, is if you hear something from science, do what's opposite. And I think that's a really terrible thing to say. And she said it kind of tongue in cheek, but what she's trying to say is don't panic and let's talk about it.
Yeah. Don't panic is my motto.
Be curious. Yeah. Don't bow to authorities. We talk about do not obey thing is a thing that people say. And
I was called a traitor for saying that.
So just don't be stoked up on fear, people. But watch this. Let your blood pressure rise with mine. We can do some telephonic meditation tomorrow together or something. I don't know, but this whole thing was good. And I think you should watch it.
It's very, very good.
I've got a guy on my Facebook or Meta, whatever you want to call it, who has TDS very badly.
Oh boy.
And Trump derangement syndrome, for those who are unaware.
Yeah.
And so he likes to really try to make things not what they are. But today he put, look at your local egg prices and see how the mean orange man, or however he put it, hasn't been able to do anything with the egg prices like he promised. And I ended up telling him, like, he has no control over the bird flu and what's going on with I didn't use culling, but with the culling of all these birds, supply and demand, it's going to be what it is. And he of course never responds because he doesn't have any leg to stand on. But
oh yeah.
Well, that's
I would love for you to talk to him, like you and he, man, there'd be blood.
Well, no, there wouldn't, because I don't get excited, and I only
he would probably
respond logically.
He would probably just explode.
Don't bring your
an idiot.
Don't bring your emotion. So I want to shout out. I'm going to shout out just a few people here real quick. I've got people sending me signals. This particular one came from my buddy Brad. We've been talking for years. Brad, if you're listening to this, thanks. What minute mark is that?
We are at 112.
So at 112, I'm gonna tell him to at least listen to the 112 minute mark. 1 hour and 12 minutes. Anyway, but I also want to give a big shout out to a Brittany P and a Sandy M. We're really working on cooking some, circling back around to the transparency of local governance and fiscal responsibility and center point price gouging and what we can do about it together. These two gals reached out to me through another source who sends me stuff, and they are rock stars. I'll be sharing stuff of theirs into the future. I just want to give them a public shout out because I feel like I need to, because they are doing a lot of work. They're not charging me. They actually provide research for another gentleman that does podcasting, actually a gentleman and a woman who do podcasting. But I just want to thank people like that. And if you find yourself frustrated and you want to do something, join the local Doge effort. You can be a researcher. You can just be a person out there looking for signals. You can find another way to get involved with your community, because we're only going to solve these things together. We can't look to Donald Trump and look to RFK. We have to agree as a society again to hold people accountable and to kind of move the needle ourselves.
Yeah.
So I'm going to sort of just change. This is completely off topic, but I wanted to ask this at some point. It hasn't really kind of filtered in yet, but it's a question for Doc. I saw somebody, there was this, I don't know, it's a beggars can't be choosers kind of subreddit. And somebody was asking, they needed blood donated for their child's upcoming surgery or something, and they gave need negative blood type, need this, need that. But also one of the things they requested was that you had not had a COVID vaccine. My question would be, if somebody had the COVID vaccine and they did donate blood, would that blood have something tainted in it that could cause some of these heart
Potentially.
issues and some of these other issues that we've talked about?
Potentially,
Turbo
yeah.
cancers and things, could it? Okay. I didn't know. I was curious.
Everybody has different results, and if you donate blood and you have the spikes and the proteins from the COVID vaccines, then it may not have affected you very seriously, but it might affect someone else much more seriously. And that can happen in a lot of cases. I personally do not know of any cases where someone donated blood and the person and that person had been vaccinated, and the person who received it had any serious problems. But I bet you they have found some of those.
And as time goes on, we'll probably see more of that. But I was just curious because a lot of people were drilling her about, you know, you need this blood, but you're wanting this. And I'm like, well, it's for a kid. You know, I would never have given mine, you know, the vaccine, and Chad didn't either. You know, we both kind of sort of break our own arms, pat ourselves on the back for that one. But
a lot of people call themselves purebloods because they've never had the COVID vaccine. I can't call myself that because I was
forced into it.
to take that.
Yeah. Did we say that on the last podcast? I don't know
I was forced.
The last one.
I don't know if it was the last one or the one before, but we have talked about it.
We had a bump in viewership. So just to give the short version, Dr. Roy had a practice in a location. A couple of local hospitals in this area wouldn't let him refer patients to the hospitals from his clinic unless he and his staff were fully vaccinated.
That's correct.
So he was forced himself, or he wouldn't be able to refer people out. And anyone that wanted to work for him in that office was forced. And so part of the reason why we're sitting here in this podcast today, I think, was because of that.
Yeah.
And the inability to have free speech about these things, and the inability to remove your golden duct tape and handcuffs.
They have actually backed off a little bit now.
That's convenient. That's
they now only require that you have an influenza vaccine. But I didn't get an influenza shot until very, very recently. And I got an email from one of the local systems, and they said, we still haven't gotten proof of influenza vaccine from you, and we're going to have to cut you off the list of providers if you don't get that done. So
when did that happen?
That was about 3 weeks ago. So I went down to Walgreens and got an influenza shot.
Okay, so I got a clip to share here on censorship and the importance of, to me, I don't, don't get too political, but censorship, local censorship, transparency is important. And remind me to circle back around to the 12-year-old heart patient.
See you, Joe.
Wild times.
Almost unbelievable.
Yeah. The last time you were here, we were really worried about what was going to happen. And now it seems like we're in a completely different timeline.
Yeah, I have to say, in addition to being just overarchingly worried about what was going to happen to the Republic and to the globe.
Just for a reference, this is Dr. Brett Weinstein. He's the co-host of Dark Horse with Heather Heying, what I mentioned earlier. He's another early bell ringer. I would put him on the level of Peter McCullough, just how he's diagnosed what's been going on in society. He's an evolutionary biologist, so this is just an interesting little clip.
I was personally worried about what would happen to people like you and me if we lost.
Yeah. Probably wouldn't be so good for business. They probably would have cracked down.
There's that, but I must say, on my darker days, I had concerns even beyond that. And
you probably should.
Yeah.
Yeah, in light of what we now know. It's this USAID thing that's going on. Mike Benz has been on that like a pit bull, and I've been following him on X, and he's going to come back on here and kind of explain everything. But he explained it the last time he was here, and I don't think I really grasped it until Elon's 6 wizards They brought in some young wizards to go in there and go over the books, and they are just finding crazy shit. It's great, and it's so interesting. I was listening to a left-wing podcast today. I like to mix it up. You know, I listen to all kinds of different stuff, and it was like I was listening to a different world. Like, they weren't even talking about all of this corruption and all this obvious buying of influence. Instead, they were talking about aid overseas and how people are going to starve. And I'm like,
it's mind-boggling, and there's also, I have to say, I'm upset at the general pattern of a failure to recognize how right those of us who hypothesized that there was a racket that had overtaken our entire governance structure. We turn out to be absolutely right about this, and no one's going to mention it. That's mind-blowing.
It's very strange that the media is ignoring it, especially the left-wing media. It's just too big of a win for the right, and so they're just ignoring it. And then they're just highlighting the good things that USA did, which I'm sure it probably did. Probably had to do some good things to, like, at least justify its existence.
As a cover story, I'm not even sure. Maybe it doesn't change anything. Obviously, this was a mechanism used to funnel money to all sorts of things that we didn't vote on, that don't make sense in light of our constitutional structure. And I obviously have concerns like everybody else about where this train takes us, but seeing that structure broken up it's a huge relief.
They gave $27 million to the George Soros Prosecutor Fund. So our own government is funding this left-wing lunatic who is hiring the most insane prosecutors who are letting people out of jail who commit violent crimes.
And that's exactly how this racket worked, is that the ability to tax the American public and then effectively get us to pay for being propagandized, for being surveilled, that's the game. And I don't know what era we currently live in. Obviously, there's a lot that's confusing about what the Trump administration is up to, but I don't think any reasonable person could be unhappy that we are exiting that era.
I'm going to read off some of the...
So I wanted to say that because we do talk about censorship a lot, and because me and Dr. Roy have been censored, and we already addressed that a little bit earlier, in that we've had shows taken down about ivermectin, and I think we've figured out maybe a way around that. But to me, it's important for us to talk about these different things because that's the only way we heal as a country. The JFK files, I think, to me, are going to tell a huge story that I've been going back and forth with somebody that I love and respect very, very much.
I've been watching with a bag of popcorn as you guys are going back and forth.
Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, he's a very well-known, well-respected human, and I love him so much. But the cognitive dissonance level in these conversations is, if you're in a system and the system has created certain results over time and you don't know the explanation of it, you kind of have to get outside of yourself a little bit. Joe Rogan, Dr. Brett Weinstein were both full-fledged left-leaning liberal Democrats. And several years ago, Brett had, he's got a whole story behind him, but he really started digging deep into these different issues, and, they joined more what I would consider a populist movement. They're still not Republicans, which is great. I don't consider myself to be one either. Don't ever want to be one. But, to me, it's more about the topics and the issues. And we talk about censorship. That should not be that should not be a Democrat or a Republican issue. That's a human right that we have under the First Amendment protections. And so, it's things like that I think we need to continue digging into. I don't know if
do we? Did we 4 years ago?
Well, I mean, when you can't say, looking at doctors around the world and sharing clips and saying, here's an option, people think about it. it just makes no sense to me.
I mean, I kind of see where so some of that argument was, things like you can't yell fire in a theater or something, I mean, I guess there are some safety concerns to some of that. And where you're saying, now we know to maybe say, well, I'm not a doctor, don't do this on my account, but this is what has been found. Maybe that is the way around it, but still there's a lot of censorship back then that is causing a lot of, even death. I mean, there's vaccine death. There's a lot of things going on that caused. But anyway,
there's a signal.
Digress.
There's a signal going out right now that I'm gonna not really get too deep into. I've got it. I guess I can pull it up on the thing here. So there's a. Oh, it went away. I don't know where it went. Well, sorry about that. Oh, there we go. So there's a movement going on.
Can we pull up your screen or?
Well, I'm making sure that I'm. Okay, you can, but it's a headline, and I'll share it in the show notes. Basically, here are the U.S. states considering legislation to ban COVID-19 mRNA vaccines as of February 6, 2025. And there's a list of them. Indiana's not on there. I've put in I'm in a text chain with a close person next to our current governor, Mike Braun, and I will be getting questions answered in this regard.
I think all vaccines with mRNA should be banned. Not just COVID, but maybe that's the only one with it right now. But
we don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we don't know because they won't let us know what is actually in the vaccine.
And
or in some of these other cocktails.
Dr. Roy freaks out on me every time I say I don't want to. I'm not going to get vaccines until I have some transparency. And he's like, "Hang on, we're not going to stop all these things." And I get it, but and I think RFK has said it very clearly. He's like, I want it to be transparent. We should have studies. We should be able to look at data. We know everybody that gets a vaccine or not because it's in your childhood schedule. It's private. I understand that it needs to be in a secure location, but we need to be looking at outcomes and comparing those outcomes to other people.
I mean, we even get nutrition panel on the side of everything we eat that tells us everything in it.
Right.
Like, why can't we have that? Something like that.
Well, and in that great big long thing that they put in the bottle or next to the bottle in the box that's around the bottle of the vaccine, it's 27 pages long, and nobody has time to read that. And somewhere in there's a small spot that says, here are some of the things, but not all of the things that are in this vaccine. And, there's mercury in some vaccines. There's squalene in some vaccines. There's mercurolide.
Say that 3 times real fast. Say it one time. Say it one time real well. How about that?
Say it one time real well. Yeah, that's right.
God bless you.
But, my whole thing, like I said before, my motto is don't panic. That's what I kept telling people during COVID. I said, don't panic. This is not as bad as it could be. And the people who stayed in their houses for 2 years, it's amazing that they did. Yeah. But I had several couples of patients who stayed in their house, and they would get groceries delivered to them, and they would stay in their house and watch CNN day after day after day.
Do you remember the TP shortage? I remember seeing videos of people using their drones to fly like a roll of TP to their neighbor and stuff. Like, it was good stuff.
That's funny.
That was just a weird time. I hope we never go through that time. The kids that were in school at that time. I mean, my cousin, she wasn't able to have her graduation.
People didn't have graduations. They were not able to see their loved ones.
I couldn't see my
dying.
I couldn't see my grandmother until she had actually already lost consciousness, and they knew that she was going to die in the next few days. And then I was able to finally go sit with her.
Right.
When I don't know if she could hear me or not, but I mean, that's just, and it wasn't COVID related, by the way.
Yeah.
But yeah. I still to this day can't. Anyway.
I was getting ready to start down a track, but you guys didn't remind me of the clip I said I was going to share if I can find it.
Hey, share that clip you were going to share.
Bear
Could you do that for me, Chad? That whatever clip you were going to share.
Thanks for the reminder.
No problem.
You guys are super helpful.
Do what I can.
Yeah.
Come on, Doc. Remind him.
Chad, go ahead.
My wife's favorite thing. She'll say, "Okay, hey, remind me to do this." I'll say, "Hey, don't forget to do that." Like immediately, she wants to punch me in the face. I think she wants to punch me in the face.
And she never does it to me.
Yeah.
If I say, remind me to do this, she never comes back at me.
Well, now that I got all sassy with you guys, I'm not seeing the clip here.
What was it about?
So it was there's a 12-year-old that was denied a heart transplant.
Actually, she was a relative of Vance.
Yeah, she's a relative of Vance. And gosh dang it!
Why was she denied?
She was denied because she had not had COVID shots.
Seriously?
COVID and flu shots.
Yeah.
So I think it's Cincinnati is where she went.
Yeah.
She's from Indiana, I think, isn't she?
I don't know whether she's from Ohio or Indiana, but she was denied by Cincinnati Children's for a heart transplant because she had not had COVID and influenza vaccines.
So Dr. Roy just summed that up. I don't need to share the video.
Wow.
I'll find the video and put it in the link.
Yeah.
But the moral of the story of what he just said. So here's all I have to say about that. I think it's bullshit because, well, I mean, I think that's just the sum of it. If you're so concerned that the child doesn't have a COVID vaccine, which there's a lot of murmurings going around, and I'm not a doctor that's saying the COVID vaccines cause myocarditis and heart issues.
I was going to say the heart, yeah.
There's a lot of instant death going around that nobody can fully explain just yet, but RFK might be bringing it. And or if you're afraid that poor girl is going to come in with a flu virus and harm you as a doctor, or you as and I'm not pooping on doctors here.
Yeah.
If you're afraid they're going to harm someone in the hospital because they have one of those two things, if your people are vaxxed and they work so well, what difference does it make?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the thing.
That's medical tyranny to me.
In COVID, you could get it even if you'd been vaccinated.
That's because it's not a vaccine.
Yeah,
it's a shot.
Right. It's a shot.
It's a flu shot. It's a COVID shot. I mean, it's not.
Well, yeah, the flu shots actually work.
It's gene therapy.
Well, I get that, but I'm just saying, like, the flu shot isn't necessarily a vaccine. It's something to help make the flu more mild or whatever. And the same thing with the COVID shot.
No, it's designed. Vaccines are designed to prevent you from getting the condition.
Right. That's why I'm saying it's not a COVID vaccine because it doesn't prevent.
No, it doesn't prevent. But most influenza vaccines are designed to prevent you from getting influenza. Yes, if you get influenza, you're one of the unlucky because it's only about 60% effective, the vaccine. But, the COVID vaccine, I don't know of anybody that didn't get COVID because they got the vaccine.
And actually, it's going in the other direction.
Once you get the vaccine, you now have COVID.
All right. So I did find the story, and it's only 2 minutes long. And just to give this merit, and it's not something that hasn't been reported on, this is actually a news channel.
Yeah.
They had the courage to share it. Cincinnati Children's Hospital, I think Dr. Roy already said that, denies a heart transplant because she isn't vaccinated for COVID due to religious beliefs. And guess what? The religious belief things, that's just silly, but let's listen.
Mom is looking for another hospital for her daughter after Cincinnati Children's denied putting her on the heart transplant list because of her vaccination status. Family feels their religious exemption should be honored. Courtney King has more.
Her father and I both feel strongly that the Holy Spirit is telling us don't put this vaccination in her body.
Adeline Deal is a happy 12-year-old girl from Batesville, Indiana.
I like to sing and I like to...
You like to swim?
Swim.
When you feel better, huh?
Yep.
But she's living with a serious heart condition.
She has Epstein's anomaly and she has Wolff-Parker syndrome.
Janine Deal and her husband adopted Adeline from China when she was 4, knowing that she would need a heart transplant someday.
I'm terrified for her. I mean, she's my child, and I want the best for her.
The Deals have done most of her care through Cincinnati Children's, but are now looking elsewhere after the hospital declined to put Adeline on the transplant list. The hospital requires patients to have both the flu and COVID vaccine, but the Deals have not vaccinated any of their 12 children due to their religion, which is non-denominational.
I called the child's advocate from Cincinnati Children's to see if they could help us with a religious exemption and so forth. And he came back and said that they said They're not going to change their policy, and this is what it is, and we are more than welcome to go find another hospital if we didn't like it.
Janine says she's frustrated because she says her
Nasty.
daughter is healthy other than the heart condition. She says the situation gives her anxiety.
It's not right. It's, we don't believe in doing the vaccination part of it.
We reached out to Cincinnati Children's Hospital about the issue, and a spokesperson sent us this statement. At Cincinnati Children's, clinical decisions are guided by science, research, and best practices. We tailor care plans to each patient in collaboration with their family to ensure the safest, most effective treatment. The deals have made headlines the last few days and received some messages that give them hope in the situation.
All right, we don't need to get into all that. So I received another signal from a friend who, this was actually on a local, I don't know if it was Channel 14 or one of those other things, but it was talking about it. And there's people chiming in and saying, shame on them for using their religion. Just get the vax, get the thing, get the heart transplant. And that really bothers me.
Get the heart transplant with the vaccine that's going to kill that heart.
It really bothers me. It really bothers me that people are so close-minded, and I think most of the people that were arguing on there, it seemed like they were obviously vaccinated or multi-vaccinated. They ignore all the signals of vaccine injury. They either ignore them or they don't want to acknowledge them.
Head in the sand?
I don't know, but it is a real sickness and a problem right now. And that's why I want to get to the bottom of the vaccine story, Dr. Roy. I want to have transparency. I want people to see all the data. I want the media to quit getting paid by pharma to shame people like this. This hospital policy is obviously a joke. I mean, I want to make this hospital famous, honestly.
Yeah.
These are the types of things that need to be tweeted and retweeted and affect their bottom line. I don't care what we have to do. I mean, this is the type of stuff people just need to stand up.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Nothing to add for either one of y'all.
No, I was the one that actually brought the thing up, and I knew.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, it's something that we've got to do, and I don't know that we can hit their reputation. We probably can't. And if their reputation gets bad enough, then it will hit their bottom line.
Well, if their budget starts drying up from funding coming in from strange places that's drying up right now, you just never know, Doc.
Yeah, it never does. That's the thing. A lot of a lot of people got free COVID shots, got free medications then, and that was all coming out of your tax pay.
Mm-hmm.
So free tests.
Yeah, free tests.
Remember the test?
We didn't do free tests. We charged for them.
Did you?
Because we had to pay for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, at some point they made them free. You could get in line, I think.
Yeah. I did a couple of those drive-through ones myself.
The drive-through.
Well, they're giving out free testing things. So
there's got to be a subsidy. Yeah, they've got to be subsidized somewhere.
Well, and there's a lot of research. Again, I'm not a doctor. You're a doctor. There's a lot of things that are talking about that research on the PCRs and the testing and false positives and all that. There's just so much stuff we don't know. That
I agree.
I don't even want to say.
I agree with what he said about PCRs. If you work deep enough with a PCR, you can find just about anything. Mm-hmm. You can find whether somebody's got syphilis or gonorrhea in their heritage. Mm-hmm. Just by doing that.
Yeah. Okay, so
even if they don't have the diseases or never had the diseases.
I think we're about an hour and a half in, and I'm still raring to go. If one of you want to fade out at some point, I had a whole nother potential plan for this podcast. This particular clip is a super long clip. I almost wanted to do a watch party in some other format, but right now, with our production, with our team, with our money, we are only doing once a week, and I'm trying to get to twice a week, and I hope to get some sponsorship and help along the way to make that happen. I would love to be able to do a podcast a week just with you, Dr. Roy, for stuff like this. And this particular video, I shared it with you. I'm thinking we just start letting it play, and I'm going to stop it periodically and comment if we can comment. It blew my mind. And it's kind of weird how things happen in the world. And I mentioned Brittany and Sandy earlier, and they just kind of dropped into my lap, and they have all this information. So you got to harness this information, and these two ladies that this gentleman introduces are going to, if you listen to it with an open mind and you consider what's about ready to happen, I believe with the JFK story, and one of the conversations I had with Tim, the gentleman that Travis brought up, was, a lot of people say the JFK story is a nothing burger. Well, the person we've been talking about and potentially hoping to get a podcast with, Dr. Jack, has some insider information that he's been talking about that RFK knows. And obviously RFK would be more interested to know why his dad got killed and why his uncle got killed and why all of his family seems to die no things. But I'm going to start this clip if you're okay with it.
Yeah.
Doc, if you feel like falling out at any point, where are we about it? Hour and 40 in or something?
Just 30 seconds from an hour 40.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can hang in for another 20 or 30 minutes. So.
Okay. Well, we may let you do, if Travis wants to keep going, we may let you do an escape if we want to skip through and talk about it. So you say another 20 minutes is what you...
20 or 30.
20 or 30. Okay. Just remind me, give me a nod or something. Not nodding off, but...
Yeah.
If I hear snoring, I'll definitely... why did you need to turn me up, Travis?
I quit snoring about 5 years ago.
It's not there yet.
Joining me again on GBN Originals, it's Neil Oliver here. Today I have two guests to talk about the COVID dossier, which has been compiled by Sasha Latipova and Debbie Lerman. Sasha is a former pharmaceutical and medical device research and development exec turned whistleblower, and Debbie Lerman is an investigative researcher and writer. They've come up with this incredible document, I would say. It's published today. So thank you both for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
This to me is an amazing piece of work. If I can quote from near the top, COVID was not a public health event, although it was presented as such to the world's population. It was a global operation coordinated through public-private intelligence and military alliances, and invoking laws designed for chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear weapons attacks. Now, that is quite a statement. Can you talk me through the process which led you to this conclusion? And I'll allow you to decide for yourselves who should lead off and who shall follow on.
No, go ahead, Debbie.
Okay. I started researching what happened during the pandemic in 2021, 2022, because I had, from the beginning, none of it made sense to me. And I started researching the pandemic planning documents of the United States government because I wanted to see whether what happened in real life, the lockdowns, the masks, the social distancing, and then the vaccines and the vaccine mandates, whether that was all part of a public health plan or whether that was something else, because it did not feel like a public health plan to me. And so I looked and I found historical documents going back years that were two streams of planning. One was the pandemic planning, or actually it was just responses to disease outbreaks for public health. And the other one was biodefense, which I didn't really know anything about. And biodefense is the plans that governments have, and there are also many international alliances for this, to respond to a weapon of mass destruction attack. In particular, for biodefense, it's bioterrorism and biowarfare. And that's when somebody releases a pathogen with the intent of killing a lot of people, and that it's not a naturally occurring outbreak. And so what I saw was that the response that we were carrying out in the United States, I started just with the United States, was actually a response. It was a biodefense plan. It was not a public health plan. And so I freaked out. Because I think that if it was a disease, it should be managed by public health. And if it was managed by something else, then something else was going on. And so I found the planning document, which is the United States government's COVID pandemic response plan. And that is a document that is not available anywhere on any government site. So already that tells you something. It's the government's response plan, but it's not available anywhere. I found it because I was doing deep research on the internet, and it was on a New York Times server where it had been leaked to them for a certain article that they wrote. And I saw inside that plan that what was supposed to be a public health response legally, so in the United States, the Department of Health and Human Services is supposed to be the lead federal agency for responses to disease outbreaks. However, in this document, the HHS was superseded by the government's task force. And at the time, the task force was being led by the National Security Council. The National Security Council is the body that is supposed to advise the United States president on military and intelligence affairs.
Okay, so just real quick, because this is a long clip, I don't want Dr. Roy falling asleep, but because you've already watched it, haven't you? And so I've watched a lot of things in my life especially about COVID, and the reason why I think putting this one out there again, I could just share it and retweet it. A lot of people that are listening to this won't get on the Twitter and follow it and do all that stuff. So I guess my point is I'm going to turn it over to Roy to say anything that he has to say at any time. But the story that most people don't know is the COVID situation and the response, including the vaccine, came from the Department of Defense.
Yeah.
So that if you think real deeply onto that, it's concerning at many levels. Did you know that the Department of Defense was working in this capacity?
I knew that the National Security Council was dealing with it, and I thought that was odd.
So, we were called names, made fun of early on whenever I think Trump might have said it first nationally about it being a Wuhan virus that came from a lab. Yeah. And everybody was called names and conspiracy theorists and all that stuff whenever that happened. So that was, part of the scam and the payment of USAID, where they were paying, I'll let these ladies tell it, but we've heard, me and Dr. Roy, we've talked about it for a long time. I think I've believed deeper things in some instances. You've believed deeper things in other instances. Now that we know USAID was a funnel for money to send to organizations to create propaganda, basically, yes, effectively, and they're having what scared me most about whenever COVID hit was the instant global response, and it all happened simultaneously, basically. Yeah. The narrative was the same everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It was the same everywhere in the United States, and it was the same in Canada, it was the same in the UK, it was the same in Australia, and a lot of other countries. There are a few countries that backed off. Sweden and Switzerland.
Those are when you and I were paying attention to narratives from those countries who were saying things differently. That was one of our signals that we looked to very early on.
Norway and Sweden,
but we didn't know why.
And Switzerland were pushing off.
So this is the story, in-depth story of why. And I understand if people want to...
Is that available in writing? That podcast?
This is on YouTube, so there's a transcript. I actually I think I put the transcript or the YouTube video into Grok, and I said create a summary and create next steps, create things. So one of the things, whether you believe or like large language models in Grok, like I could do a condensed version and just say what these ladies said. Maybe that's the right thing to do moving forward. We can talk about that. But if you have to dismiss yourself at any time, just feel like going.
I will go in a little bit, but I don't know that you ever sent. I saw part of this on YouTube, but just send me the URL for YouTube for that.
For the whole clip?
If you could. Okay. Yeah, for the whole clip.
Oh, I thought I sent you the whole thing. I must have given you just a short piece. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right. I'll get launching.
And so
that's fine.
That's who was in charge of our pandemic response. That led to a cascade of discoveries about people who were involved, about agencies that were involved, and then seeing that it was a parallel response in so many other countries and that it was coordinated. That was really where the story kind of blew my mind.
Sasha, to bring you in, why were we told it was one thing? We were all invited to think it was a health emergency, that it was being looked after and supervised by chief medical officers, by physicians, all sorts of people involved in health. Why were we told it was that when it would seem that in reality it was a response being coordinated by the military? Why was it a bait and switch?
I think it was evidence of governments lying, in my opinion. So I asked myself that question also. I first believed, like everybody else, that this was a health event. When the actions of the government stopped making sense to me, I also began investigating into this. And eventually saw Debbie's article. We got in touch and met over this. And I did my own investigation. I'm from pharma industry background. And so what they were doing made no sense to me as far as health, public health. All these nonsensical measures which were making things much worse than if it was genuinely a health response. And then also remember, we were all, including you probably, we were all censored and banned on social media for even questioning that this was some sort of a zoonotically evolved virus. Immediately everybody would be shut down and say, no, it's real virus from a bat, from the Wuhan lab, from Wuhan market. And now, apparently, it's okay to discuss it as a bioengineered virus, although that's also a second layer of lies. Because, again, this is evidence of lying. They prepared several layers of lies because they know one will become untenable at some point, and they will need the second one. And the second one, that this is a biological developed.
So why I'm stopping here is, again, just to set the table of,
yes,
you and I sitting down and talking to each other. From the very first episode, I think I told you I had an idea about a truth-seeking apparatus think tank, and it was about assembling a team of people together that can see things that happen, say, hey, that looks familiar, or something's not right, and look to those people time and time again quickly, rather than having this whole narrative laid out before. So like fool me once kind of thing.
Yes.
So I feel it's important for people to hear this story because they lay out kind of what happened and how we fell for it. We talk about cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
We talked about the unwillingness or the inability to understand exactly what happened. If you just think it was just something and it was just, it just happened, you will do better next time. If you just think that's it, that's a problem. Because it's much deeper than that.
Yeah. I knew from the very beginning that this was not something that came from a bat in a market in Wuhan. This came out of a lab. It could not have come out of anything else except a lab. And it may have been taken out by the people who were in that lab who were not washing their hands or were not wearing protective
accidental release or whatever.
Yeah. And, I'd like to believe that it was accidental release, but
now that you watch this video, you probably
I never thought it was getting more and more
never thought it was
that it was not accidental. It was, in my opinion, originally was that this was brought up to keep Trump from being reelected.
Well, you know what the signal was for me?
What?
Whenever there was competing narratives.
Yes.
Why the same apparatuses that told us what it was all at the same time were all telling everyone the exact same thing. That
everybody everywhere was saying exactly the same thing.
So it's a symptom. And I'm trying to teach them I'm trying to learn psychology here along with people.
Yes.
I have pattern recognition, like from an early age. I see something and I'm like, this is bullshit. I just, and whatever. I don't always know what it is that's bullshit, but there's just something in your gut that you got to feel.
It smells like bullshit. It's got to be bullshit.
So I feel like this whole story, again, I feel it's relevant because no matter if it's a pandemic, if it's another thing, this is a pattern of how we are basically led in directions, and we don't, like, going back to the JFK assassination. Why is it not more interesting that they've had to lie to us since 1963? There's a deeper story that this story gets to that. And why is that important? Because everything that's happened, every presidency that's happened prior to Trump getting into office, Trump was not an insider. Trump doesn't have all the grooming and you can't do this, you can't do that.
Yeah, it was all the insiders. Yeah. And JFK was kind of an outsider, just like Trump.
All the Kennedys. Well,
I
mean, they all have, they were trying to circumvent the current government. And it didn't end well.
There's some that are
didn't end well for
that
him.
are really shooting. Some own Kennedys are shooting down RFK, and
his whole family is trying to.
Not whole family.
Most of them are trying to shoot
a lot
him
of
down.
them are.
Well, we'll probably find out why at some point. RFK is not going to say it, but
and you know they killed JFK. They killed JFK Jr. They killed RFK Sr. And I'm concerned about the safety of our president.
You don't think JFK Jr.'s plane just mysteriously fell down in the water?
No, come on.
Accidents.
Anybody in the current administration, Elon, President Trump, RFK Jr., all I hope have security details out the nose.
And Pete Hegseth.
Yeah.
Because he's another outsider. That
well, let's keep playing down this road here. And I love riffing with you guys, and I think we could do it all night. I really could make this one a midnighter. We can't do that because everybody's got stuff to do tomorrow. But and most people won't watch. Here's why I think it's important: letting it play, coming in, giving our insights, and having something to refer back to later. Like, here's the things that happened. Here's these guys that all had their own experiences and what they saw and what they thought, and that provides another blip for a future event that we can all learn from, hopefully, and kind of grow from. So that's the goal.
Yeah.
And I'm going to jump in, Sasha, because I think we might differ here. I don't know what it was, and I think the point that we're making in the dossier is that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter
what the trigger was. So the fact that everybody's focused on whether it was from a pangolin or a raccoon dog or the Wuhan lab it's not beside the point. It's an interesting question, but it is not what destroyed the world. What destroyed the world was the lockdowns and the vaccine mandates. That's what destroyed the world. Exactly. And so what we're asking people to do is refocus. What was the origin, not of the virus? What was the origin of the response?
Exactly.
Because the origin of the response is what destroyed the world.
Yes, over the years, my position has evolved. You know, I woke up in 2020, I suppose, and I've spent the last 4 years listening to as many people as possible. And where I have the point at which I have arrived is that whatever COVID was, whether it was something that happened between a pangolin and a bat that met in a bar and had too many drinks, or whether it was something that was cooked up in a lab and released deliberately or accidentally, is interesting but beside the point. What matters to me is what they did with it.
Exactly.
What they used, the thing they called COVID, to then do.
Yes.
That's what troubles me. And the statistics to this day still declare that this, whatever it was, there was no excess dying until 2021 and after the rollout of the things they called vaccines.
Yes.
And the toll was taken on people who were average age 82, 83, which is beyond life expectancy, and in most cases they had comorbidities. So whatever it was, it was killing the ill elderly. If indeed it was something new at all. But why were we placed under military coordinated controls in the face of whatever it was that was largely non-lethal?
Right. So again, in this dossier, we try to step back from giving our own interpretations, although in interview I'm happy to do so. But we just want to point out that people who are using the dossier will see this is dry facts only and references only. So we try to remove personal interpretation as much as possible and just say they used what was designed for CBRN, which is chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction response, never told public about it, lied about it, which is evidenced by their action and by how they were lying about viruses, known viruses, biological weapons. So they have massive amounts of lies, massive amounts of censorship, which was driven centrally from intelligence agencies. And people need to realize this is nothing to do with health.
That's where the money was coming from.
Now, why they were doing this, you can speculate, and
USAID.
My personal view is that this is for population control, global population control, and as you know, they're also not hiding this. The Agenda 2030, the establishment of global government. So I think those goals and those.
Interesting, right? It ties right back into everything that we've talked about in the past about Bill Gates and about you know him talking about we are overpopulated as a globe, and him talking about one of the best ways to control populations are through vaccines. The fact that we're allowing that psychotic person to still have a face in the public narrative. I think Rogan and somebody, I forgot who it was maybe funny, like, oh, I think it was him and Mel Gibson, ironically, because we already showed that clip. It's like,
what I was thinking.
How is that guy still walking around?
Yeah.
Like, how is he still just not somewhere under deep investigation? I don't know. And same thing with Bill Gates. Like, everything that he said, all the money that he's spent, everything that he's put in a direction, like, draw the line however you want.
Yeah. I got to bail, guys.
You got to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Travis, you good for a little while?
Sure.
Okay. Thanks, Doc. I appreciate it.
Sorry, I muted the wrong mic.
I'll get with you tomorrow, buddy. Okay. Watch the duck. What he said? Did I leave it early? You didn't stop the film, did you? You didn't. We're still
still cooking.
Okay.
We're at 2 hours.
It's only 7:46.
Yeah,
That's really early for him.
It's all right.
Maybe that he's watched this once, and maybe it's super annoying to him.
Maybe
he said he's intrigued by it all, and he's not saying anything's wrong. I think he's watched it once. He didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, here we go.
Plans existed for quite some time, and this was supposed to be the final push
now to just
for
be you and me chatting
establishment
about
of
it.
those of that new world order, new global government. And health, it happens to be a really, really good mechanism.
And here's what I want from you, Travis, since this is a different little format. We don't have a camera on you. We could spin the camera around if you want to. But what I will ask maybe along the way here, or if you have a signal or you don't understand something, or maybe whatever, maybe you just kind of like use, hey, this is the first time I've heard this, and this is weird. I first want to say I agree that it's weird in a lot of ways, but it's also aligns with a lot of things that I've been hearing for the last couple of years. So.
Well, yeah, I'll say that so far I don't know what about it got me back in the day, back in 2020, but I mean, I kind of felt all of this at that time anyway. I mean, just some kind of gut feeling that we were being led astray. I mean, something I didn't bring up a little earlier, which I don't know if anybody really cares about, but we talked, he talked about having to get the COVID vaccine back then to be able to refer patients. My wife at the time actually worked for one of the health organizations, and she was just in like a backroom insurance. What do they do? They assisted
paper push.
Yeah. I mean, they assisted. They never saw.
Not to discredit what she does.
No. Well, she doesn't do that anymore. She went back to the previous. Like she
administrative stuff.
It was kind of a job out of necessity versus out of love or anything. But she never saw patients. She never saw like people at all. And yet she was still required to get the COVID vaccine. She did get the COVID vaccine. So she's, as Doc said, she's not a pureblood. Only my daughter and I are. But even at the time, like we went back and forth, like, should you just quit and find something else? And at the time, unfortunately, we were at a financial situation where we couldn't really do that. So she had to. So far, there have been no major physical ramifications. But I really hope that in the future that our financial situation isn't what causes my wife to have some type of major health issues later on.
Think about how many people that happen to around the world, including our military and everyone that works for a hospital that had to deal with the same thing Dr. Roy had to deal with. It's terrifying. And so the reason why, to me, again, it's important to tell this story is there's so many patterns throughout history, and not just in this country, but you look around the globe of governments and organizations and things behaving badly.
Mm-hmm.
And you dismiss conspiracy theories. You dismiss people that see things that you don't see, or that just, it sounds too crazy to really, to even consider. You don't want to consider it because it sounds too nefarious and evil. If you want to put that word into it, if you're more of a religious type person, it sounds so bad that you can't even really get your hands around it. And more importantly, you don't want to spend the time to try to understand it. You just hope the next
You hope it's not true.
You hope the next president or the next whatever can come in and fix it.
You hope your country isn't leading you astray. And we've now found out that they pretty much have.
So this is why it's the biggest. This is why it's the biggest story, and what we have to understand. And the people that if you can just, I don't want to say remove Trump from the equation, because that would sound like something that's been trying to be, they've been trying to do that already.
Mm-hmm.
If you remove him from the conversation now, and you just look at the story, and you listen to this full video, and you think about what has happened, and go listen to the story and listen to the things that have actually happened. What we've been set up for here is a test to how we are going to respond when the thing happens again. And it's the most important story that you've ever thought about. And it's a story that our kids need to understand history. Our kids need to understand why our founders, whether you don't like everything they said or did, or some of their policies and some of the things that happened were right or wrong. You can't negate history, and you can't negate the people that did things and erase the story, because it erases things like this from understanding how these things arise. You have to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. You have to not forget it, and you have to apply it the next time that happens. And so, to me, we're going to put this is going to be out on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And it's going to get community noted. It's going to be out for everyone in the world to read and listen to and whatever, and say, well, she's wrong about this because of this or that, or she's wrong about that because of this or that. And you can have those nuanced debates. What I feel is so important, and why we're changing it up, and when you leave, I might let you just keep recording it, and I'm just going to sit here and go through it. Or I'll just, maybe play the summary of what Grok says and share the link. Maybe that's where we go with it. But
sure.
It is so important to me, this telling the story and having it out here in the sphere, in another location. I'll have it on a hard drive somewhere that it can't be taken away. It can't be memory hold through a large language model, or Google taking it down because it's conspiracy, or our government destroying a server or a series of servers and the information's gone. There's so many different things that can happen, and I understand I just went down an even darker rabbit hole.
No, it's all possible.
This story is so important because I don't want it to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why the RFK, goes back to the JFK story, the Tulsis who got put on a do not fly list because she said the wrong thing to the right whatever, and then they basically were calling her a terrorist.
Mm-hmm.
That is the apparatus that's behind that's behind this story, and they're doing whatever they can do to protect themselves, and they're saying that they're doing it for our safety. And you got these buffoons coming out in Senate saying why these people shouldn't be put into the position that Trump was elected to put.
Oh, they're scared. They're scurrying.
They're running scared. Well,
oh man,
those people, some of them are running scared because they've taken money from pharma, and they probably know more than they want to ever let on to believe. But their bosses and the people that they've been put into compromising positions above them because they've been paid off, like, this is where you owe us. This is where we're going to take these things that we know about you and expose them if you don't do everything that you can do. I mean, that's what Epstein Island was all about. That's what we're getting ready to find out with that story is they would take them there, they would get them compromised, they would put them with a young person that maybe they didn't even know at the time. I'm not going to say they were pedophiles that were going to an island. I want to say it was like a honeypot or whatever they call that. You fly them there, you put a little...
Now you have dirt.
You put a little thing in them, you got them on video, and now you got a little bit on them. And then you're like, well, we got you on that. I'm sorry, but now you're going to have to come to do the ritual and have more conversations and blah, 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 blah. So they get you time and time and time again. So this is me giving even a Bill Clinton out, which I don't think he should be taken out and be given a pardon, but because those people did things over and over and they didn't say the thing. They didn't step up whenever they needed to step up. I'm sorry I ranted, but it's like,
good.
This is a stepping up moment.
Yeah.
For controlling people. It's a really good mechanism to scare people like they did here with some imagined story. And then push all these nonsensical measures which are primarily designed to control, like lockdowns, masking, vaccine passports that they wanted in every country, which is now being probably replaced with digital ID. And so they're still trying that, the digital ID, the biometrics, the surveillance. So that's still ongoing. And that was the first implementation of it, because through health, you can convince masses of people to voluntarily submit their freedom, and then whoever is running this operation has perfect beginning to establish all this control.
And I'll jump in here because Sasha and I agree on all of the global control issues, and I think the important thing to realize here is that there is, so for me, it's more structural than and systemic than that they were trying to use COVID to kill people. Because I think if they were trying to use COVID to kill people, it didn't do that great a job, or the vaccines, or the so-called whatever the mRNA technology. I don't think it did a good enough job for that to be the justification. It might have been. I'm open to that interpretation. In my opinion, the global structures that have been put in place and that have been growing and growing and growing, especially since 9/11 and since the fall of communism, which is these supranational corporate public-private partnerships that are really pretty much controlling everything right now in the world. Because national governments don't have too much power anymore.
I think it was an attempt for control.
The one that is in charge of military.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think it was
this
more...
is where you just hop in, because if you have an insight, this is what we're doing.
Well, it was more of an attempt, I think, to see how well we would follow orders.
Yeah.
In masses. In mass. Like, honestly, I think it was to see, okay, can we control the masses?
I think it was part of that. I think it's a little more than that.
And what can we do to... Well, I mean...
They institute... So we've got Indiana legislation that's putting things into bills about vaccines and other things that we're talking about on a parallel. So this they're really not talking about the vaccine yet. Right? They're not talking about why that's important or whatever.
Sure, right. I meant like the whole COVID situation.
Yeah.
Like, now you have to stay in your house.
Yeah.
Now you have to do this. Now
Compliance.
You have to do that.
They were finding out
who's going to comply. How
comply.
many will comply if we?
So you and I are on a list because we didn't comply at some capacity. You and I probably are on another list, and we'll talk about that with Trump if I ever get a chance to talk to him. Because we were dissenting voices.
I couldn't imagine being able to talk to Trump.
And
anyway,
we're even asking questions. Well, if you and I get good enough at asking questions and coming to the head of the thing that needs to be answered next, that's what I mean. I'm not trying to be famous or popular or whatever. I'm trying to get to the answers, and I'm trying to prevent my kid, your kids, our future grandkids from any of this stuff from happening again.
Sure,
and it takes people that aren't afraid of whatever, and I'm not getting paid by anybody.
And you put my back to this damn window. I'm going to get sniped one day.
I got your back. Let's put it that way. We don't talk about those things, but we're surrounded with things that can take care of. Yeah, I get.
No, I know.
Yeah. So we're not at that level yet. We got to get more than whatever.
But I think it was a test of compliance, personally. Like I think, among other things, there was probably a lot more to that. But even at the time, I was like, I even told my wife, I was like, they're trying to see how well they can control us. But anyway, you can continue on with the clips.
Well, no, jump in any time, because these are the things. Like just listening to it, anybody can go and listen to it all on their own, and they should do that uninterrupted and not listen to us. But like where I feel like maybe right now we can bring value is looking back and the things that they're describing that happened and kind of what we were seeing and what we were feeling at the time, because those are the civics lessons. Those are the little nuanced conversations and the teachings that you have to give your kids about why it's important to understand history and what happened. It's not just forgetting that our founders did some things and wrote some rules, and some of them were bad because they were this, that, or the other. They did a lot of things because this kind of thing was going to happen. And they said, I posted 4 different things from our founders about, because people were saying, oh, Elon doesn't have the power. Oh, Trump doesn't have the power. I said, basically the fact is,
Who elected Fauci?
Our founders, and exactly. Well, Ronald Reagan, unfortunately, anointed him, and I used to really like Ronald before that one. Anyway, you hear, I don't know where I was going with that. The founders tried to warn us in the Federalist Papers, and they said things which seem outdated and sound weird, and I'm like, oh, those people, those old people, they don't know. What was going to happen. They don't know the internet was going to hit. The patterns of what we're seeing rise above digital. They rise above any of that. It's about power, control, manipulation, and that's all it is. So, anyway.
Yeah, agreed.
Biodefense. So responding to biological whatever is huge. It's an enormous international global conglomerate that includes pharmaceutical companies, global pharmaceutical companies, and all their subsidiaries. So just think about how many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people already are just employed in that. Then we have all the academic institutions and the journals and the governmental agencies that are in charge of those things. and it becomes a too big to fail entity. That's how I think of it. It's a too big to fail entity. And so if there is no outbreak and there is no biowarfare or bioterrorism, something has to happen to justify their existence. Sasha, go ahead.
Yeah, right. So the evidence of this consortium also we're including in the just the tip of the iceberg, really, in the dossier itself. So I received at some point a couple of years ago, I received anonymously a whistleblower tape from an internal meeting of AstraZeneca executives. So the meeting, it was a larger meeting, but the recording is about 6 minutes from two people talking, Pascal Soro, who is the AstraZeneca CEO, and Mark Esser, who is VP for monoclonal antibodies. And they both kind of recount the success so-called from the 2020 when they were developing vaccines and biologics for COVID. And specifically, Mark Esser says that, this is part of the consortium that was established in 2017 when we were approached by DARPA, which is a U.S. Department of Defense Advanced Research and Development Agency. And so DARPA, specifically Colonel Matt Hepburn, which we've included in our dossier, approached numerous pharmaceutical companies. This consortium contains hundreds of companies. AstraZeneca was approached in 2017 so Mark Esser says, interestingly, when the DoD asked him to participate in this, he said, I thought it was science fiction because as a experienced pharmaceutical research and development professional, he knows it's science fiction. They were being asked to develop vaccines and drugs in response to novel viruses that DoD will identify for them in 60 days or less. And so he said it's science fiction because it is science fiction. You can't do that. But somehow they were convinced by money and decided that that's okay. And were working on this until 2020, when he also says that on February 4th, 2020, that's why we're publishing it here, DoD called them, the entire consortium, and told them to switch to COVID products now. So at that time, on February 4th, because COVID was declared a national security threat. So on February 4th, there are no cases, practically no cases, no deaths in the world. U.S. government DoD somehow decides it's a national security threat. Calls pharma, they themselves call, no, there's no presidential action, nothing. DoD goes directly to the pharmaceutical consortium and says, you guys switch to COVID, money is coming. And that's it. The rest is history. So,
did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard it.
Okay. I just wanted to have a dramatic pause right there. I'll let
pause for effect.
Whoever's listening at this point and hears that should cause you to okay.
From then on, we also see that all these militaries execute the same plan in all these countries that we've tracked.
Us blokes hate talking.
He's got a little ad in here. He's got to make money at some point too.
Sure.
Yeah, he's probably making more than we are.
Well, everything is more than zero.
Hey, you had a bourbon.
I did have a bourbon. I appreciate that. Very good bourbon.
But the fact that all of this was happening simultaneously according to the dossier, the United States of America, the United Kingdom of Great Britain, Australia, Canada, the Netherlands, Germany, and Italy.
Yeah.
That they were all.
And those are only the countries that we know about.
Yeah, there are many more. Anecdotally, I know that many more countries did the same exact.
My attention to this was drawn a couple of months ago now, and I had content on this channel then. The Dutch Health Minister, Fleur Agema, testified, if that's the right word, in her own parliament, that as far as she was concerned, there had been a coup d'etat. Mm-hmm. That the decision-making processes were taken away from the Parliament of the Netherlands, and the overarching control was coming from NATO, and it was her use of coup d'état.
Now I'm gonna correct you though. Actually,
okay. Well, you don't have to switch it to me if you don't want to. It doesn't matter. All I'm going to say is why this is important. If you can continue listening, if you can get out of your own head and just break through. You can't believe that it's true. It's a conspiracy theory. You can't deny anything that they've said thus far.
No.
You can't deny anything that they've said thus far. So why would they do what they did? Why would they do what they did? Is it the DOD thinks there's too many people on the planet?
Bill Gates thinks that.
Well, I mean, I think Bill Gates is a useless idiot. A useful idiot, maybe. A useful idiot.
I always thought Microsoft Works was the best oxymoron.
There's always fall guys. There's always patsies. There's always people that get inserted into places of power that is a release valve for things that happen. So you have somebody, and you can look at, well, Gates was doing all this and he funded these pharmaceutical products, and
he flat out said that,
or Soros or any of these people, and I think those aren't good actors. I'm not saying they're good actors. What I'm saying is, whatever this story is getting to, why DOD launched this at whatever capacity, it just so happened that Trump was on the scene, had been on the scene for at this
3.5 years.
Well, when it officially, he got elected at 2016,
right?
I don't know what he was digging into.
I don't think he'd had a chance to. I'm curious, had he won,
well,
what would have happened?
Well, just wait. Well, we wouldn't be nearly as good right now as we are because he had 4 years of pause. What I'm saying is, he told RFK that he was going to dig in the JFK files, and his Secretary of Defense and other people in the administration who were not good actors and looking out for his own interest or our own interest talked him out of it.
You mean back in the 16 to 20?
Yeah.
His first term?
So leading into the pandemic being launched until whatever that window of time was, they've said it. They released this. This is the narrative was already being released, and this is how we're going to respond prior to anyone really dying. And we were being told just how bad it was going to be. It was going to be like bubonic plague and smallpox all together.
I remember that.
There was no way for them to know that because, quote unquote, there was nothing there yet. There was no there, except for the fact that it came from a laboratory where they had been formulating something that they felt like could do something in the wild.
There were too many pieces of other illnesses in a single virus that had to be manufactured. I mean, I think we know now that it was manufactured. I mean, there was no debating that. But I mean, at the time, there was like, oh, well, there's this of this and this of that. And that doesn't happen in nature.
So I think you and I are agreeing, and what I want to caution people to do is get stuck in the details. And we're talking about something that's just an obvious signal. The thing that I wrote up here, virus origin and the nuances of things. The nuances of thing is not up there. Virus origin, less important than origin response. And so what is the origin response story? Why is that there?
Originally it was a wet market thing.
It's it's a 3-letter word. No. Not where did it come from? Not where it came from.
Okay.
Why was the narrative in place for where it came from? After it came from wherever it came from, why was there a place where multiple countries were given the orders, this is how we're going to respond and this is how we're going to react, and everything was in lockstep? Why did that happen?
You mean the world order?
Whatever it is.
The powers that be.
No, I mean, the people that talk about WEF, what it is and what it isn't, the New World Order, the Bilderberg Group, you can go back to 20 to 30 years ago of people talking about these crazy people that talk about these world powers that are aligning and doing things. And I'm not even saying that is connected to this. Because I don't know. It could be. I mean, that would be you and me speculating because it sounds very familiar to everything else that makes sense to us. If all of this is true, which we're getting ready to find out, because we've got the people in place that are not going to allow it to go away and hide into the night. I hope all those people can survive.
Yeah, me too.
Right?
Me too.
All of them.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's important because we have people that are still fighting and bickering and worried about what Donald Trump is or isn't.
Trump derangement syndrome.
And it's Trump derangement syndrome, and I believe that also was something that was pushed upon us. It was something that they organized because they need us fighting amongst each other. They need us thinking that he's the bad guy, so don't look over here. It's always about smoke and mirrors and all this stuff.
Agreed.
And so I don't want to get stuck in the nuance of, well, it came from the lab or blah, blah, blah. What does that really tell us? It doesn't really tell us anything except for they created it. It wasn't just something that happened in the wild. That's important.
Yeah, because they tried to tell us it was from the wild.
But it's not the story. But that was the first signal we got.
Right.
If it was just a natural thing that occurred and it was like the bubonic plague or smallpox, if those were natural, that came out of nowhere, if those were natural, then we could respond in that like, as soon as they made that first lie, I come back to this, a half-truth always becomes a full lie. And you can't stack stories on top of each other and make them survive over time, which is going back to the JFK story. So where I've challenged you many times to talk about Dr. Jack Kruse or think about him or listen to the things that he says, he has dots I don't even think that they fully put in here that is backing up many of the things that they say. So I think he's connected with these guys in some way, shape, or form, honestly. And he's been very kind of quiet
with
these researchers.
Here? Okay, yeah.
So I think he's given them signals and all that stuff. Anyway, again, this is probably the story of our lifetime.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how it could get bigger in any way, in capacity, because everything's going to change. Everything needs to change. So anyway,
this is what got me here.
It wasn't. Yeah. She did not say coup d'etat. She actually. So I've talked to the researcher who said it was a coup d'etat and who brought all of this forward. He has actually contributed to our dossier. She did not say coup d'etat.
Okay.
She is the health minister of the Netherlands, and she was actually reporting within the framework of the government in a stance that seemed to the public, and it might have been or it might not have been supportive of the government's response. So all she said was that we had to fulfill our NATO obligations and that our intelligence agency was running it. That's all she said. She did not say coup d'etat. So I just want to make sure the record is correct. The coup d'etat is the interpretation of the researchers who brought all of this forward. But now, she was very much against the COVID measures when she was not the health minister. That was several years ago. But when she became the health minister, she stopped criticizing them. And so the researchers that I have talked to, they don't know whether right now she's just trying to send us some messages, covertly or sort of surreptitiously so that we can get those messages and actually appear to be supporting the Dutch government's response, because that's what she's doing right now.
But there's no denying, is there, that the decision-making process was assumed by national security, referring to NATO, and that effectively the response to whatever it was being coordinated not by the Dutch Parliament but by NATO and the Dutch security services.
Yes. I was just correcting the record, to make sure.
No, I'm glad that you did so. But I mean, to me, that's a coup d'etat in all but name. That's that's the assumption of the control and the coordination of the process being taken out of Parliament, which is the people's hands, and placed in the hands of NATO.
Right. And so Italy too. Italy, we just got the information about Italy from contact in Italy. In many different countries, researchers have been desperately trying to get access to documents. I am actually involved in a 2-year ongoing FOIA battle with the government, trying to get the documents that are behind the government's.
Let me know if anything you just heard you want to riff on. I just excused myself to go to the restroom just for full disclosure, because I've already watched this and I've heard it. Travis has not heard it, but if you need to excuse yourself at any, and we can go anytime. There's 30 minutes of this left, and I'm not.
We're about
trying to force you to
2:27 right now.
I mean, time for this one for me doesn't really matter, but you do have a life and a family, and you are a volunteer, so I will be courteous of that. I can always riff back into the kind of the summary and send the link out, but I let's give it another row here and just see if you have anything if you want to continue.
COVID response plan, but they are supposedly National Security Council. You can't FOIA the National Security Council. So other countries have managed to FOIA planning documents of their governments. So the Dutch researchers were able to FOIA a lot of excellent documents that showed exactly what you said, that it was an intelligence takeover and that it was a coup. In Italy, they also FOIA'd a lot of documents. And in fact, there was a committee in Italy created on February 5th. Okay, so this, and again, the coordination is incredible. So the day after, somebody from the DOD called the pharmaceutical companies and told them that it's a national security threat before there was any deaths or any illness at all. And before the public was told, I really want to emphasize that recording that Sasha has should have been front page news everywhere because the pharmaceutical companies were being told by the military that there is a national security threat, and nobody in the public was made aware of this. So if they knew.
Okay, so just to get us caught back up here.
Yeah.
What do you think? Did anything from that little window of clip?
I mean, once again, it's kind of how I already felt at the time. I mean, I think, honestly, taking a step back, I think that what happened in 2020 opened more eyes. I think it hurt what they were trying to accomplish more than it helped, because I think it opened so many eyes to. I think we all trusted our government. We trusted that our best interests were what was being thought of at the time. Thanks to this whole COVID debacle,
it was a spotlight.
I mean, yeah, I think it opened many. I don't know that we would be here without it.
Well, people no, most definitely not.
Right.
And the COVID thing was the thing that steered me in a completely different direction. And I'm going to say to any person that wants to not believe the story, you have to explain how multiple countries with investigative reporters uncovering things that all align back to what these people are saying from what they saw in other countries. That happened. You cannot, there's no way that this is a multiple country, coordinated something. What would that even be?
Control? I don't know.
Well, no, I mean, if they were making up a lie to act like it was control, if they were they trying to pretend that Trump was putting in these orders and he was trying to take over all the other countries or whatever? I don't
know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
And they thought that it was a public security threat, and we weren't told about it. That's an enormous scandal right there. Just that.
The people that hate Trump and think he is evil, he's not been in government for very long. He doesn't have control of the DOD.
He's evil because he's taken away.
He doesn't have control of any of these things that they pretend that he's going to come in and wreck. The DOD and the CIA and all these other things have been openly against him. They all signed the thing saying he was lying. They signed the thing saying the Biden laptop was fake. Those people all are proven liars. Somebody was directing them at the same time to make those stories up, to get him unelected.
He's uncontrollable.
To get him
and so
unelected.
They're scared. Yeah, he's uncontrollable. So
hate him if you want. Be afraid of him. Never trust another president for the rest of your life. I don't care. You can't miss the story.
That. And so in Italy, the same thing happened. So on the 5th of February, they established a special scientific commission within the government that was now responsible for responding to the national security threat posed by the coronavirus.
You would think that the governments of all of those nations that you're listing would see it as being in the interests of the people to know that they were in that kind of danger, that it was a national security threat, not a health problem, but they were effectively in as much danger as though some foreign agency was pointing nuclear or biological weapons at them.
You would think.
They might mention that to the general public.
You might.
Yeah, but I remember what they were insisting on and shutting people down for and just delisting the ban. I was banned on Twitter. Is for questioning that this was a naturally evolved virus. So, I mean, this is an enormous lie. Not only they didn't tell the public it's a national security threat, they also suppressed and banned and censored anyone who suggested that it might be something other than a naturally evolved virus.
And the dossier shows, so we also included lists of...
Okay, so this is where I would ask Dr. Roy, rather than just allowing us to naturally cure the virus through things that are already out there in the wild, ivermectins, whether they work or not, this is not, we're already shut off of YouTube if we wanted to be, but if we didn't want to be. If those things worked and we were really literally just trying to save lives, why would we have not changed the story at that moment in time?
I think that I think this was...
No, speak globally, not you and me as the people that didn't fall into the trap, which was a perfect trap, and people were forced into through tyrant and tyranny. They were forced into that. That's not their fault. I don't look at people that did it in any weak-minded way. It was a natural behavior to trust the authorities, to trust the thing. You didn't want your grandma to die. You didn't want the other person to die. You didn't want to expose them to something. I felt that way. I felt like at some point I could have gotten COVID, and I did. Like if there was any symptoms or whatever, I did isolate.
Yeah, so did I.
Which is what you're supposed to do,
right?
Which is how.
But any other illness,
it's how
I was
flus
sick.
come and go.
I was sick at Christmas time. It wasn't COVID. I was just like cold or flu or whatever. But I didn't go to my grandparents' Christmas party because I didn't want to get my grandfather, who already has pulmonary fibrosis. I didn't want to get him sick because I pretty much knew that would be a death sentence for him.
You knew that,
but that had nothing to do with COVID.
You knew that was going to be a death sentence because that's what common sense tells you, and what our medical system has told us for decades and decades is, if you get sick, isolate yourself, treat the symptom,
get over it.
They talk about ways to prevent. They talk about antibiotics. That's a whole nother ball of worms that me and Dr. Roy didn't even get into today, that he had a huge clip on. Anyway, it's the response. Why?
I still don't know why.
I know.
I think Dr. Roy might have had an idea. Like it was around the time of a re-election. I don't know if that had something to do with it.
Yeah, well, it could have.
I mean, that
it could have had something to do with it. But why was his diselection? We all know, anyone that's rational. Like, no, I don't want to say that. That was bad. People that are looking above this and know that Trump was in power for 4 years and he didn't do anything. He didn't create new wars. He didn't become Hitler. He didn't do any of these things that we were told he would do. The opposite of that, actually.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and if you just look at it objectively, you can still think he's a terrible person. I don't like him personally.
Oh, yeah.
I like him more.
They should have shut his Twitter off.
I like him more now that he got shot at, because I think he's more humble and he's more of a human now. And he's definitely, I mean, he's showing nuances of a better human.
Yes, he says stupid stuff, but as a president, I think he's done well for the country.
Yeah. Anyway, we're getting here.
Yep. Fair enough.
Agencies and organizations that are associated with intelligence and military that were doing the censorship and the propaganda. And that evidence that we have in the dossier shows that in multiple countries, that started in January 2020.
Yeah, and
so the planning for this started in January 2020, when there was absolutely nothing going on.
The official planning.
That's the point. I mean, as we said at the top, you and I, Debbie, were saying that it's not what COVID was; it's what they used it to achieve.
Exactly.
You know, that is the point. When they started, when the lockstep, coordinated effort to lock down, shut down, take control of the narrative was happening, as Sasha says, there were a 500 or something confirmed cases worldwide.
That's
a negligible number of deaths, and no deaths in the United States of America. So there was no reason to operate as though there was a national security threat. There was nothing there.
Yeah, and another thing I want to remind about pandemics, I talked about it with Debbie in my recording, but people today don't realize, even the public health professionals, I often run into this issue. They don't realize that declaring something an epidemic in public health, when it's a legitimate public health issue, is a retrospective affair. After it transpired and already self-extinguished, then you compile all the data, and then you statistically determine whether it was a pandemic or not.
Dr. Roy, you're not here. Is that true or is that false? I think Dr. Roy is going to say, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to happen.
Because you need to compare it to the average of the previous years. So today we have in the United States, we have cases of the plague every year. We don't have a pandemic of the plague because cases of something doesn't mean a pandemic of something. So cases get treated with antibiotics and nothing happens. So, and again, and declaring something a pandemic, in my opinion, is absurd, because pandemic means a simultaneous illness all over the world and deaths all over the world. And that never happened in history of time. So, they, based on just public health alone, they couldn't have prospectively declared, like in January decided we need to censor everyone, and on February 4th called the pharmaceutical consortium and tell them to go switch to the.
So the censorship industrial complex origin timeline is very key.
Oh, it was planned out. I had no doubt it was planned out.
Okay. But for those that didn't realize, I'm trying to offer a signal and a pause for them to understand what was just said. We haven't had a pandemic that was a mass spreader event for a very, very, very long time. They just said that no one was dying of this at the time, that the signal was sent by the DOD to all the different countries that this is the deadliest thing that we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. We've responded. We've been together almost 100. We've been both on the planet for combined about 100 years. Nothing has ever been done in any capacity like this before, nor have we ever been prepared for it. There's no public health conversations going on about it. There's no, this is how we're going to respond if this happens. Nor has there been any conversation about what has happened that wasn't good or how we're going to fix it moving forward. How did we mess up? What could we do better? Like just in Evansville, Indiana, what could we do better? What signals did we not understand? What could information like this, why is it important to get to the bottom of this? You have to prevent the next thing. And the next thing is not necessarily a pandemic, but it could be. And if it's one that comes from from space or however it lands and it creates something, we can't not be trusting the apparatus and the doctors and the people that are in charge.
Absolutely. You want to trust them. I want to trust them.
It's impossible.
But at this point, at this point, there's no, this asteroid coming in 34 or 32 or whatever that is.
It's not because of the individual either. It's not because of the individual doctors in play. It's the narrative controls. It's the,
we have to be able
the
to
golden
trust.
handcuffs and the duct tape and the inability for them to openly speak about what they're seeing and have curiosity and debate. It's about free speech and non-censorship amongst people like Dr. Roy and every other doctor that has just witnessed and could be sitting here talking like we're talking with each other and just giving their freaking opinion about what they've just seen. It is the most logical. I can't even understand how we can't just force that to happen. It's so stupid. We should force every doctor in Evansville to give their opinion and give them immunity from future financial harm or being fired from their hospitals or whatever the hell golden duct tape or handcuffs they think they can do to them, pay off their law school loans, give them a grant to do whatever they want to do with the rest of their lives and move on. They're all being controlled to control us again.
What really kind of stinks about this is that it's almost the boy who cried wolf. Because now, if there is a mass casualty event, and we're supposed to listen, and we're supposed to, and we need to listen to somebody, and actually, we all need to follow some type of procedure.
Then it could be our fault.
We're not going to do it.
Yeah, it would be our fault because we couldn't read the signals right, because we didn't adapt that onset of like this doesn't smell right, and just start raising the red flag and saying, "Whoa, stop." Yeah. And then once you can have that apparatus where smart people can get in a room and say, this is dumb. And you have the 20 smartest people in whatever that realm is. If it's the doctors that called COVID wrong, called it properly from the beginning. Mm-hmm. If you have instant access to them and they say something's not right, this, and this, and that's the direction where these investigative journalists can start. And the faster you can get that information, that's where AI and the technology realm actually can help us. Yeah. Like we wouldn't have had that in the past for past things like this, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one of the potential benefits. But we have to understand that we can't be afraid of what's going to happen to us with our job because we didn't do the thing that we were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And especially doctors, because they are like kind of the last authority figure aside from police who just enforce laws, like if you break a law. Mm-hmm. So this is why a vaccine passport being a law is a terrible idea. This is why any law that has to do with forcing you to do something that you don't want to do is a bad idea. This is why our Constitution is in place. And yet they can cancel you and say your Constitution isn't applied because you didn't do the thing when you were supposed to do it.
You don't get a heart because you didn't get the vaccine.
I don't know. It's this is not conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
So, you can't do it prospectively, yet here's what they've done, and now they're claiming it's okay, and now they're writing it into the medical textbooks and in everywhere and convincing everywhere that this is totally normal, guys. Pandemics.
Not just the textbook, Sasha, you're right. That's absolutely correct. And not only that, but in every plan now that every government has written, and you can look it up, in Biden's, it's now called biosecurity because they have now merged public health and biodefense into one, because that's what COVID did. It took public health, which is a tiny little thing. Public health is not a big deal. It's like, it's important, and we have to monitor for, outbreaks of disease, and we have to make sure that we keep the public as healthy as we can. Hygiene is good, making sure people have nutrition and heat and a place to live and a place to sleep. Those are good things for public health, but it's not very sexy. What's sexy is, woo, scary viruses, and we need to do these crazy things like lock everybody down and shut down businesses and transfer $3 trillion of wealth, which is what happened. It was the biggest upward transfer of wealth in the history of the world in a short period of time. To
declare something a pandemic while it's happening had never happened before.
No, because you can't. No. It's nonsensical.
And they changed the definition of pandemic also. Yeah. By the way, even if you were to do it retrospectively, it used to be that it would have to be something that killed a lot of people in a lot of places. It had to have killed a lot of people in a lot of places in order to retrospectively, like Sasha says, be declared a pandemic. That wasn't happening when they declared it a pandemic. So they changed the definitions of a lot of things, including pandemics. But what I was trying to say is, if you look at the planning documents, and this is true in the UK, it's true in the EU, it's true in the United States and in Australia, they came up with planning documents in the last few years that are biosecurity plans now for dealing with so-called outbreaks. And in the first paragraph, it always says that because of human activity and the increase in human travel and interaction with nature, there is an increased threat of outbreaks of, novel diseases. That is false. That is demonstrably false. I can point you to the research studies that have showed that is false. But it was certainly false in the 20 years leading up to COVID. In the 20 years leading up to COVID, there was an average of 10,000 deaths in the entire world, 88 billion people, 10,000 deaths a year average from any of those kinds of novel disease outbreaks. That includes SARS, MERS, H1N1, all of that. There was no demonstrable threat at all. And there still isn't, because we know that COVID was something else. It was not that.
Yeah, so I think another thing that was so important for them and why they did it is to establish that you can prospectively declare something a pandemic without any evidence. And their key to the fraud is PCR. So nowadays, PCR was never, again, I'm coming from pharmaceutical medical device. PCR has never been validated as a diagnostic for anything. And you can't. It's a lab tool.
That's a signal. Coming back to what we talked with Dr. Roy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
At best, it's just a laboratory machine that they use for lab experiments. It's not a diagnostic test. And but through this whole affair, they've now solidified the lie that PCR is valid to declare novel viruses and pandemics. This is critical for them. And, so that's what people need to understand. So they will come in, and not just in humans, because they're also now merging all the health into one health.
That's right.
And they're claiming everything is health. And even like animals and plants around are, if we declare some novel virus in the chickens, guess what? Now we have zero eggs in the store as of now. I went shopping. I got the last carton in the entire store. Why? Because they murdered all the chickens based on this absolute fraudulent PCR testing, declaring that all the chickens are sick when the chickens are perfectly normal. And they're going to continue doing this, continue crashing the food supply in our country, in your country, and claiming that, humans are just encroaching on the planet too much. And all these plans, again, Agenda 2030, we need to, constrain, retreat, managed retreat, rewilding, all these words. Just kind of give you the idea that fewer people on the planet is better.
And I think,
No, go on.
I was just going to say, so when we talk about why the dossier is important, it's not just, I think we had talked before that it's an important record of what happened, and that's absolutely correct. And we hope that we can continue to add to the dossier, and we're asking anybody who has any information, any documents, to please let us know, because we want to add more countries and we want to add more information. But so it's important as a record, but it's also important in order to draw people's attention to the global mechanisms of control that are happening. So the global mechanisms of control that we know from the dossier exist already is a huge web of censorship and propaganda that exists, that was used during COVID and can be used for many other things.
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah, Trump should executive order back to when Obama canceled the ability for our own government to use propaganda on the American people. So we have a law in place basically prior to Obama that said, and we mentioned it on a prior podcast, and I can't pop it up in my head right now, but it was basically made using propaganda on American citizens illegal. Mm-hmm. We use it on other countries. They call it soft power now. You're hearing Mike Benz talk about how they manipulate and control things. They're saying the trans conversation and
closing U.S. aid is going
to
make our soft power.
It's going to make our soft power weaker not whatever. And there's
China's going to take over.
There's all these fear tactics and stuff being thrown around. And Mike Benz makes the case, and it makes a lot of people mad, that potentially there's some accuracy to our soft power work being beneficial, and the bad actors or whatever around the country. And I'm not saying any of this is true because I don't know that it's true. I haven't really believed anything our government says who should be our enemy and when for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Should we really hate Iraq? Should we really hate Syria? Should we really hate Russia? Should we hate anyone? I don't know. Mm-hmm. That's just stuff we're just being told. But at the end of the day, the moral of the story to me is we have to have the truth in this. We need to know why we're lied to. They can say soft power is an issue, and they can say that needs to be top secret, and maybe there is something to that, and maybe the right people will be a play to be able to explain that at a better level to where you and my, I'll say little brains just because it'll make them feel better, but sure, we see things and understand things probably at a different level than most, and call that whatever it is. They still have to be truthful to me. They have to be accountable. And if you say we're doing these things in other countries and this is why and this is the end, then if those countries can decipher those signals and figure out that they're being played like we've just figured out we're being played, mm-hmm. then I guess maybe then we'll have to figure out a new game. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think AI is going to help them figure out they're being played.
Things. And we also know what Sasha said, which is that using public health and diseases is a way to control global populations on a global level, and also to control the food supply. All of those things are things that COVID showed, and I think this dossier sort of specifically draws people's attention to.
Why isn't this leaping straight to the top of everyone's news agenda? The mere suggestion that something that was pitched as a health emergency was in the background, in the shadows, being coordinated and overseen by the military. Mm-hmm. Without that being declared to anyone, yep, that NATO and the DOD and other manifestations of the military complex around the world had assumed control, mm-hmm, while people were being invited to listen to men in white coats say, mm-hmm, it was a health emergency, let's save the NH.
So when our local news media agencies and the people that we know and love and we trust and we like a lot in these realms question why we say we need media that doesn't follow narratives and AP signals and tell us the stories we need to be talking about, the stories we need to be following, it's because this story has been washed away for a very long time. And because the JFK story wasn't told properly, and the methods why it wasn't told properly wasn't told to the people to where they could see how it was happening and when it was happening. Another layer of control and power and tyranny stacked on top of it, to the point we get to, they get to a point where they can release something into the wild that may or may not even be, I don't even know what it is at this point, but they can continue to sell people to think that you need to keep taking vaccines, and the people that say that this is anything other than a virus that's really, really bad are conspiracy theorists, and they're your enemy. Mm-hmm. The people that come out and the guy you like that you said we should sit in a room and talk, that whatever, he's simply believes the narratives very strongly that he's been told or that he wants to understand. He's not a bad person. probably.
Agreed. Yeah.
He's probably a really good person. He probably wants.
He's technically family.
He wants the same thing probably for his family and the people around him that you and I want. I think that's very safe to say. In most instances, most of us don't want different things. Maybe we got more aspirations, or we want different money situation, or whatever that means. At the end of the day, if we just come to any discussion and we say we both want the same thing, we can just sit down and watch this and agree to listen to it. And if you have a disagreement anywhere, and you can go to the facts of what they're bringing to the table and say this is wrong and this is why, then let's have that conversation. That's what this is bringing to a head. Are you still good? It's got 20 minutes left on it, and we're it's 8:40 at night, just so you know. Travis is putting it burning the afterburners. Let's go. Let it go one more thing, and then we can potentially pull the plug on it. But I'm enjoying it, and you haven't seen it yet, so I'm wondering if you are wondering. Maybe I can skip through the last.
Well, the wild thing is that they're pretty much on par with how I felt about it in its origins when it first started coming out. When in 2020, these are the conversations that my wife and I had, and I had no real information to support how I felt. But it felt wrong. It smelt wrong. It sounded wrong.
You didn't have the details of
that's what I'm saying.
Being shared to all the countries at the same time. And you were in the mire of it. Like what I'm saying now though is, now that you know, and now that your eyes are open, truly open, and you know that those feelings and signals that you got before were valid. What do you do with that?
Yeah, but I don't know.
Because you want to have a happy life again. You want to believe that your daughter and your future family and grandkids and all that are going to have it better. And I think that's why we're here. We kind of are in a refounding moment in some ways and capacities. And that doesn't mean, I don't even want to say make America great again. I think that's built on a false narrative. I feel like we can be better than we've ever been. It has nothing to do with anything that we've known since 1963. And there were a lot of mistakes prior to 1963. There was a lot of bad ideology. There was a lot of bad things happened. Slavery was terrible. No one will say slavery is not terrible. Slavery is still alive today. There's still migrants coming across the border. Well, not as much today than there was a couple months ago, but those people were sold into slavery, and sometimes childhood sex slavery. Some of those people will never be found again. At the end of the day, we got to get through all that. We got to get to the end of it and come to an agreement with people that are just not a Republican or a Democrat. They just want a better world, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah.
Chess or whatever.
Yeah.
Why? What will it take before this kind of information leaps out at people as demanding
That's the question.
a response from us?
What demands a response?
We're trying.
Yeah, we've contacted, and thank you, and we've contacted so many journalists, independent journalists.
That's the marketing question of the year, of the decade, probably of the century. How can you take something that you believe is a significant story and have the right people paying attention to it to get it out in the right way? Dr. Jack Cruz has talked to Rick Rubin about the story in a movie, maybe a documentary, maybe whatever. I don't know. It could be Oliver Stone's JFK updated. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, but maybe it's you have to watch JFK and JFK 2.
I've seen JFK.
Did you
Kevin Bacon?
Did you watch his second? He did.
I'd never watched the second one, no.
Yeah. So basically, I don't remember it, and I did watch it, but it was basically saying, yeah, nothing that I said has turned out to be a lie. And then Dr. Jack Cruz basically came in and added additional layers. And I think we talked about that when he's telling his story. He actually was either in residency or he was working in a hospital, and Oliver Stone and then we're in the basement of the hospital filming a scene from JFK when he was there. That was a pretty good. That was a pretty good cross story there. So
the mainstream doesn't want to have anything to do with us.
So and even so there's several layers to this. So the mainstream, of course, has no interest in any actual real topics anymore. We know that. But even independent media find it very hard to go to places which could be construed as conspiracy theories. Again, I think during COVID, we learned that conspiracy theory is actually not a bad word. And we actually learned that conspiracy theory is a concept that was invented by the CIA in order to prevent questioning of the JFK assassination. So in order to smear people who were questioning it. They called it a conspiracy theory, and it's a very convenient tool.
That's strange.
That they use, and I think we need to reclaim it. I am a very proud conspiracy theorist.
But it's not a conspiracy theory. There's no doubting, based on the receipts that you have, the coordination that is demonstrated by the paperwork that you've got, that there was a conspiracy.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not a conspiracy theory.
Yes,
there was a conspiracy.
Well, and it's also hard for people to fathom. It's hard for people to fathom because they always say that there's two things. One is people say, and Sasha, you and I talked about this, that, oh, well, the military, they can help coordinate. They have like these large networks where they can help coordinate the distribution of supplies, the distribution, so people somehow have been made comfortable a little bit with the thought that the military is this integral part of whatever national activities. And I think that's very disturbing. I think we have to shake them out of that. But I think that's one reason why when we just say, oh, the military was involved, people are like, yeah, sure, the military was involved. They have good distribution channels.
What about the...
So there's a theory on the USAID is what you call it, but they've morphed it into USAID.
Mm-hmm.
So the USAID story to me is, yeah, we spend a lot of money. Yeah, we send it to places, but we have good intentions. Okay? Do they have good intentions? If you connect,
I doubt it.
If you connect, well, no. I mean, you just not doubt it.
Some of them.
Let's just talk about it. Some do, and I don't think the actors on the ground. I don't think the
just
people,
like Rogan was saying.
I don't
there's
think
something in there that's probably worthwhile.
Yeah, and I don't think the people that are doing the things that they're told to do from their higher ups think that they're doing something wrong in a lot of instances.
Yeah.
Some of them are bad actors. Some of them, maybe they don't even know where the money's going. Maybe that's landing somewhere in some account that's untrackable through Bitcoin or something else. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where it's going. But the moral of it is, once you understand that, that's the apparatus we've been told. That's why it's essential for what Elon Musk is doing. He's pulling the shield off. He's ripping back, and you have to analyze.
You can see the man behind the curtain. Finally,
you can see it. Yeah. And if we really need U.S. aid, and we really need these programs handing these things out around the world, we need to have a public conversation about it.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Because that's not national intelligence. If Africa needs this or that, that needs to be something that's talked about. It shouldn't be up to Bill Gates for damn sure, because he's a psycho, and I put everything that I own on that. What was that?
Lost one of our lights.
Lost one of our batteries.
Allegation
that
it's getting
we're about to the timeline. Time limit.
Kennedy Jr. has
put it on 1.5
or made some time ago that the DOD went to AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, whoever, and spent money to acquire the right to put those labels on a product that was actually coming out of the DOD.
Yes. Yeah.
He's saying that those vaccines were not developed. Not developed by Big Pharma.
Yeah.
That those, wherever they came from, it came from somewhere else. And that Big Pharma was paid to stick its labels and branding on those products.
Yeah, this was...
I really don't want to stop, but I understand we're probably running up against your timeline, and we've probably lost most people that are going to listen.
I mean, we're at the 3-hour mark. We're just past the 3-hour mark.
Yeah. So here's the moral. We got a little under 20 minutes left of this video, and I'm going to pull it up here and just kind of tell you who it is. He said who he was in the beginning for those of you that haven't followed it all the way through. That information will be in the show notes. And Travis, here's what I hope, that like if I can't get you to watch the last 20 minutes of this video and come and talk to me about it and where it landed with you and how it made you feel at the end, and bring that energy back to the next time we talk. And the next time we talk, we're going to be talking about Centerpoint and some of the local things that we're trying to accomplish. Hopefully we have some segment that we can do that just kind of finishes up here. Sure. Because what I don't want is to leave this hanging, because to me, again, I feel it's the story of my lifetime, going all the way back to seeing JFK, the movie, for the first time. My worldview changed in that moment in time.
Oh, this is a precipice for a lot of people. Like this, I didn't doubt my government near as much as I do now if it wasn't for this whole situation. I mean, yeah, this is huge. There should be movies and documentaries. And I mean, this is a plateau of our lifetime, like you said, that I can't.
Here's where I'll take it one step further. You and I have talked about education. what we've been taught, what we haven't been taught, who writes the history books, who knows
the winner of the war is who writes them.
Who knows this information and who's not allowing these stories to be explored more.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it folklore? Why is it conspiracy theory? We need an education, and I'm not talking about teaching your kid at a very young age what's going on right now. Sure. They honestly need to be shielded from this. If they can never have to really understand exactly what happened, I don't think that's bad, but they need to understand the context of what happened and how easily it happened and how quickly it happened, because they need to learn the signals, and that's not comfortable. That's the conversations we don't want to have with our kids, because we want it to be all shiny, happy people.
Mm-hmm. Rainbows and butterflies.
And because they all need to be innocent. But, there's people in communist countries, there's kids in communist countries, there's kids in fascist countries that wake up to the reality of the government around them doesn't like them very much, and they don't treat them very well. Mm-hmm. And they punish their families and the people around them with immunity. And people don't think that we're there. They don't think that we can get there. By the grace of God, to whatever that means at this moment in time, we are not there, because we have the ability to talk about it, and we have the ability to use our brain, and what are we going to do with it? So we are at a precipice. So if there's 5 people listening to this, and 2 of them, this is funny. If there's 5 people listening to this and interested in taking additional action, listen to the rest of it.
What are you going to be in the show notes, right?
What are you going to do with that information? Are you going to call? You're going to reach out to me, reach out to Dr. Roy? I would say me on this topic would be probably the one. I'm at Chad Schmidt at Twitter. If you don't know me on Facebook, you can find me pretty easily, Chad Schmidt. I'm with the Doge effort too, locally. Nationally, watch this video. Start your local effort of people around you, people that you trust or not trust, people that are just friendly to you, that are open to hearing things and are curious. This is a story that we can't let get washed under the rug. This is why the media has been destroyed. Trump's first presidency, his biggest win was destroying the media's credibility. Mm-hmm. That opened up the potential for new media and for podcasters and for people just sitting around and having conversations like this. And we have to do that. And that's why we're here. It's not very much energy, but I feel comfortable, a little more comfortable, because you and I have experienced this thing together.
Mm-hmm.
And then what are we going to do with it? That's what Doge is about to me. They're doing it at the national level. I feel like the spirit of it needs to happen at a local level. You take the things that we learn. What are we going to do with the education system based on the information that we're getting ready to get, based on AI and how it's changing the jobs and everything else? I mean, there's a lot of conversations that need to be had that aren't always going to be sunshine and lollipops.
I think something we can hit next time is I'm getting a lot of people that are worried about the DOE going away, and then the specialized learning plans for the kids that aren't quite at the same level, and those going away, and institutions no longer having the 504 plans and all that stuff. So
yeah, I don't know enough about
that's
those
a concern that I've been seeing.
Well,
we need to talk about that next time.
Well, possibly, but just off the top, I don't agree that just because you're 9 years old, you need to be in a certain class.
Well, it's the what do they call it? A specialized teaching plan or whatever that is, to where maybe a kid needs an extra half an hour per test, or maybe whatever it might be.
Well, they're good in math and not good in English, or they're good in English, not good in math. And Susie or Bobby on the other side of the room is really, really good in this area, and they're sitting there, and they should be in another room focusing on something that's more important to them.
Like I said, it was more the disillusion of the DOE and whether or not schools will be able to continue these specialized plans or whatever for each individual kid and that kind of thing. So,
yeah, I don't know if they can, but at the end of the day, our results are not getting any better with the specialized plans.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
All right.
That's probably not the next conversation, because we're going to potentially have 2 attorneys in here, and we're going to be talking about energy.
That's right.
And a completely different realm. Mm-hmm. If you and I could riff on this even off camera, or do you're at home one night and we listen to the next 20 minutes of it and come to a conclusion, that might be kind of fun too. We do something a little different, but I appreciate you, my friend. And thanks for sticking around later. We're not later than we have been in the past, but
it's a pretty long one. This is probably the later
one of the later ones.
I think this is the latest that we've done here in our new location.
Oh, that's fair. Fair. Thanks for sticking with me. I appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks for everybody that's got to the end here. We promise to continue bringing things we find are maybe insightful, but maybe just things that we feel if we don't share it. There's a clip that I didn't share, and I'm gonna leave it with this. And it was a doctor, and the doctor said, and I'm paraphrasing, and I'm gonna butcher it, but he said sometimes malpractice means that you do the wrong thing at the wrong time, and it had a negative effect on a patient. Mm-hmm. Sometimes malpractice is you knew something you believed to be true so strongly, but you didn't say it out of fear or out of the potential of getting something pushed back on you in some negative capacity. It doesn't make you feel any better either way. So sometimes you just got to do the things that instinctually feel right, ignore whatever the potential consequences are. First, do no harm, but you're doing what's in the best interest of the people that are around you. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.